Chapter 418. When the word old was mentioned, one could see that Ing Zong's face instantly turned green. Ahem, how can Minister Kuang say that? Your body is healthy, so I think it's good. Didn't you tell me to rest at home a while ago? You should be fine now. I'm still not feeling well. Moreover, Gaozhou Prefecture is very far from Nanjing. I can't guarantee that I can get there quickly. When Kuang Yi saw that Zhu Qizhen had a guilty look on his face when he mentioned his illness, he felt pity for him and his heart softened. However, when he considered the long journey, he was afraid that he would make a mistake and instinctively wanted to refuse. It's fine. You can take a carriage there. I will arrange for the relay stations along the way. Kuang Yi listened to the announcement. Zhu Qizhen was afraid that if he continued to delay, Kuang Yi would find another excuse. Thus, he said in a firm tone, Minister of War Kuang Yi is an experienced strategist. As my right-hand man, you will be conferred the title of Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince and also the Minister of War. He was conferred an official just like that. The Crown Prince's junior tutor was one of the 3 orphans. At the same time, he was a secondary grade 1 official and also the Minister of War. It could be said that he held great power and was definitely one of the pillars of the imperial court. As soon as the imperial edict was passed down, the other 5 ministers all had looks of envy on their faces. Words of congratulations could be heard one after another. When the imperial edict was given, Kuang Yi was extremely touched. Ever since the great Ming dynasty was split into the north and south, there were no longer any primary grade officials in the imperial court. The cabinet was also removed. The ministers of the 6 ministries became the leaders of the officials. He originally thought that he would be satisfied if he could keep his position until he retired. However, he never thought that there would be a day when he would be promoted to Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince and become a secondary grade 1 official. With such a position, he could definitely be called the leader of the officials. How could he not be excited and moved by this honor? He was so touched that he knelt on the ground. Thank you for your kindness. I will go home and pack up before heading to Guangdong. Even if I have to sacrifice my old bones, I will persuade the loyal duke to work for the great Ming dynasty and defeat the enemy. Good. Seeing that Kuang Yi was so straightforward, Zhu Qizhen happily stood up and said, as expected of a loyal minister of the great Ming dynasty, a pillar of the country. Just like that, Minister Kuang immediately packed up and left. Everyone else had to cooperate with him to the best of their ability. In addition, if the Duke of Loyalty and Courage raises any conditions, my beloved subject can also agree to them on our behalf. Yes, Your Majesty. With Zhu Qizhen's words, Kuang Ye's heart was filled with confidence. He had more confidence in the Guangdong trip. In this meeting with the Emperor, Kuang Yi was conferred the title of Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince and regained the favor of the Emperor. Outside the Kuang Manor, there was an endless stream of officials who came to congratulate him. It was a scene of prosperity. In comparison, the mercenary camp outside Gaozhou City was as quiet as usual. After more than a month of training, all the cold vanguard soldiers and the auxiliary soldiers had gone through several forest battle drills. This allowed them to have a better understanding of how to fight in the forest. From being completely passive in the beginning to having the ability to fight back, their conditioned reflexes had formed. As long as they were walking in the forest, they would instinctively make some defensive or offensive responses if the slightest bit of the situation was wrong. Not bad, the military quality of the cold vanguard soldiers is very high. There are also quite a few good seedlings among the auxiliary soldiers. I'm afraid that it won't be long before the elite cold vanguard soldiers expand. Yang Chendong looked at the results of the drills that the various companies sent over and nodded repeatedly. He appeared very satisfied. Seeing that Yang Chendong was in a good mood, Hu Mang, who was at the side, hurriedly handed over the report card about the temporary auxiliary soldiers' studies. Young master, take a look at this. It's the results of the temporary auxiliary soldiers. Not bad, there are actually so many who can score 60 points. Very good, very good. Looking at the results, although the knowledge tested was only for the 2nd grade of elementary school, it was already very difficult to score a passing score. This at least meant that the literacy class was successful. Yes, Not only did the political committee work hard, even the two madams put in a lot of effort. Some of them are already qualified to be temporary auxiliary soldiers and are even close to the standard of the cold vanguard soldiers. Now, their loyalty is still to be tested. Tiger's Mane reported everything he knew to Yang Chendong. Loyalty is indeed a problem. No matter how strong a person is, no matter how strong a soldier is, without loyalty, the stronger they are, the easier it is for them to betray their master. Tell the political committee to pay special attention to this test. Yang Chendong nodded in agreement. Yes, young master is right. These people haven't been to Resin City, so it's not easy to do some work. After all, we can't be sure if there are spies from other parties. Now isn't the time to announce young master's identity, Tiger's Mane said in a troubled tone. The soldiers who joined the army in Resin City usually didn't have to worry too much about their loyalty. Other things aside, just the changes that could be seen with one's eyes were enough to let everyone know who to follow in order to live a good life. When they and their families lived a good life and didn't have to worry about food and drink, they would have to think about who brought all this to them. Why would they need to worry about loyalty? When someone mentioned that they had to join the army to protect their home and the fruits of victory from being violated by others, the number of people who joined the army had already reached 90%. In addition to the benefits a soldier could enjoy, it was enough to feed a family of 5 without having to worry about food and water. Once they reached a certain age and needed to retire from active service, they would be given jobs that others envied. Even those who were injured on the battlefield would be in high demand once they returned home. With all these benefits, why would they need to worry about the lack of manpower? Why would he need to worry that these people would have any rebellious thoughts and intentions? However, it was different in the territory of the Great Ming Dynasty. There were some people whose backgrounds weren't even clear. Even if one tried to brainwash these people, they wouldn't be able to meet the best requirements. If they were allowed to understand too much about these people, they would be exposed even more. If Yang Chendong's identity was exposed because of this, wouldn't there be a huge problem? At the very least, the safety of his family in the capital became the most important thing to worry about. We still need to seriously investigate their backgrounds. For those who we can't be completely sure of, we can consider persuading them to leave the ranks of temporary auxiliary soldiers. In short, if there is a trace of uncertainty, we can't use them, let alone use them. Yang Chendong nodded. How could he not know what the consequences would be if his current identity was exposed? At that time, even if he didn't rebel, others would say that he had rebelled. Why didn't he just become a subject of the Great Ming Dynasty? Why did he suddenly raise so many soldiers? If he really became a Sima Zhao, everyone would know about it. However, many times what one feared would happen. Just as Yang Chendong and Tiger's Mane were discussing the loyalty of the temporary auxiliary soldiers, the deputy director of the security bureau, Yang San, hurriedly came looking for them. Panting, Yang San's appearance gave Yang Chendong a very bad feeling. Normally, Yang San's physical fitness was not bad. Under normal circumstances, even if he ran 10 kilometers, he would not be so out of breath. However, now that he was acting like this, it could only mean one thing. Something big must have happened. Young master, things are not good. One of our auxiliary soldiers has been captured. As expected, just as Yang San steadied himself, a very bad news came out of his mouth. What exactly happened? Yang Chendong asked with an unfriendly expression. It's like this. Yang San then gave a short report of what had happened. The person who was captured was called Lu Jian. He was a platoon leader in the auxiliary battalion who had just been promoted not long ago. He was a soldier from Mount Qishan on Ryukyu Island. His family had been in Mount Qishan for generations, so his background was very clean. In addition, he was very motivated and learned everything quickly. It didn't take long for him to become the squad leader of the auxiliary battalion. A while ago, because of his good performance, he was promoted to platoon leader of the auxiliary battalion. Under normal circumstances, those who could become platoon leader of the auxiliary battalion were qualified to enter the cold front. All they lacked was an opportunity to be tested. This time, during the training of the auxiliary battalion in the jungle battle, Lu Jian's performance was very outstanding. After the training results reached the standard, the battalion commander gave everyone a day off and allowed them to enter the nearby Gaozhou prefecture for a stroll. Lu Jian also took a day off and entered the city with his 5 comrades. This was also one of the military rules. Soldiers were not allowed to enter the city alone to prevent accidents from happening. Once the 5 of them were together, they could more or less take care of each other if anything happened. The chances of accidents happening were reduced to the lowest. Originally, Lu Jian and his group had been together since they entered the city. However, when they came across a rouge shop, Lu Jian thought that he should buy some things for his newly married wife in Mount Qishan. He also heard that the quality of the things in the Central Plains were very good, so he wanted to go in and take a look. However, his other comrades rejected his idea. They all laughed and said that this rouge shop was only for women. It was embarrassing for a man to go in. The others were not willing to go with him, so Lu Jian entered the rouge shop called Song's Rouge Shop alone and asked the other 4 to wait outside for a while. However, once he went in, there was no news of him. It was not until more than 15 minutes later that his 4 comrades felt that something was wrong. They went in together, but they didn't see Lu Jian inside. Feeling that this was a serious matter, 2 of the auxiliary soldiers stayed behind to keep watch outside the rouge shop. The other 2 quickly went out of the city and reported to the barracks. After Yang San received the news, he immediately asked for instructions from Yang Chendong. Chapter 419. Young Master, Platoon Leader Lu Jian is an auxiliary soldier who joined from Qishan. He knows a lot of things. If anything happens to him, I'm afraid the consequences will be unthinkable. After Yang San finished speaking, he reminded him softly. Tiger's mane's expression was also nervous, as if he was afraid that Yang Chendong didn't understand. He added, "Young Master, to be able to become a platoon leader of an auxiliary soldier, he basically knows your true identity." "I know." Yang Chendong nodded heavily. "But you shouldn't underestimate our soldiers. Since he can become a platoon leader, I'm sure that soldier Lu Jian is a person with a strong will. We must all have confidence. Of course, just in case they had to find the person, and the sooner the better. How about this? Let's enter the city and see who has the guts to capture our people." After he finished speaking, Yang Chendong's eyes were already spitting out cold flames of anger. It could be seen that he was really angry this time. This wasn't as simple as capturing his people. The person behind the scenes probably wanted to know the true strength of the mercenaries. "Young Master, tell others that you're sick." When Tiger's mane heard that Yang Chendong was going to personally go, he said worriedly, "Besides, to find someone, Young Master doesn't need to do it himself. I can go." "You can't, at least not now." Yang Chendong shook his head decisively. It wasn't that he didn't trust Tiger's mane, but Tiger's mane's identity to the outside world was only his own servant. He didn't have any official position. If he went like this, it would be very inconvenient. He wasn't. Even if he didn't have the identity of an imperial envoy, he was still a loyal duke of the great Ming dynasty. Even if this title was given by Dai Zong and some people in the southern Ming dynasty didn't recognize it, he still had the identity of a loyal duke. As for telling others that he was sick, it was very simple. He just had to appear weak. It was also a good opportunity to see how those who wanted to harm him would react when they saw him like this. After Yang Chendong made up his mind, Tiger's man and Yang San knew that they couldn't stop him, so they quickly went to prepare. Since they even dared to capture auxiliary soldiers, they had to be prepared to fall out with them at any time. This time, they couldn't bring fewer soldiers into the city. Gaozhou Prefecture. There was an inconspicuous courtyard in the city. Broken walls could be seen everywhere, reminding people that this place had experienced a war not long ago. Courtyards like this could be seen everywhere in the city. After the Huang bandit army raided Gaozhou Prefecture twice, this place had long been emptied out. No one knew where the original owner had gone. This ownerless courtyard had now become the place where the embroidered uniform guards worked. Before this, Wei Guang had arranged for people to dig a cellar here. Thus, Lu Jian's kidnapping wasn't a coincidence. It was premeditated. It was just that his luck wasn't good and he just happened to be the target and kidnapped. In the courtyard, Wei Guang stood there in his embroidered guard uniform. Beside him was a subordinate who wasn't very tall. At this moment he was explaining something with a bitter face. "You didn't say anything? Didn't we allow you to use your methods?" Wei Guang's brows furrowed and he seemed very displeased. "Boss, this brat's skin is rough and his flesh is thick. He's very tight-lipped. If we didn't discover him in time, he would have bitten his tongue and killed himself. I think we should slow down and not be too hasty." When the short brat explained this, a trace of envy appeared on his face. Biting his tongue and killing himself? What a tough guy. Wei Guang was also shocked by this news. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Lu Si, keep an eye on this person. If we really need to slow down, think of a way to send him out of the city. You have to know that he's a mercenary. Once someone finds out that he was captured by us, I'm afraid we'll all have to bear the consequences." "Boss, it can't be. We're the embroidered uniform guards. We don't need a reason to capture people. Even if they find out, what can they do to us?" Lu Si's face was full of disbelief. Maybe they can't do anything to us? Or maybe they won't even care about losing a person. But no matter what, we still need to be prepared. How about this? You go and arrange it. Try your best to send him out of the city and find a safer place. Wei Guang didn't know why, but his right eye suddenly twitched twice. When he spoke these words, he was especially careful. Boss, there's urgent news." Another embroidered uniform guard quickly ran into the courtyard. "What's the rush? Where's the steadiness I usually tell you to be?" When Wei Guang saw that his subordinates didn't have any discernment and were so rash, a fierce look flashed across his face. "Boss, the mercenaries have entered the city. I heard that the Duke of Loyalty has also entered the city." The embroidered uniform guard ignored Wei Guang's displeased look and told him the news he just received in one breath. What? Wei Guang, who was pretending to be absent-minded, suddenly froze when he heard this sentence. Then, as if he remembered something, he grabbed the collar of his subordinate and said, "What did you just say? Repeat it again." With his collar grabbed, the embroidered uniform guard found it difficult to breathe. At this moment he didn't dare to resist. Instead, he forcefully repeated, "The mercenaries have entered the city. Looking at their grandiose appearance, I'm afraid there are no less than 2,000 of them. Among them, there's also a very luxurious carriage. I heard from others that it's the Duke of Loyalty's personal carriage." Bastard, how could this be? With a sudden force, Wei Guang let go of the embroidered uniform guard's big hand. Then, he fiercely stomped his foot and glared at Lu Si as he said, "Don't move first. Let me go take a look first. That's right, instruct the people here to keep their eyes open. Once they find something wrong, kill them. In short, don't leave any evidence behind." Seeing that Wei Guang was so anxious, Lu Si didn't dare to be negligent and immediately nodded. "Boss, don't worry. Once something goes wrong, we'll kill them to silence them. The dead tell no tales." "Very good, let's go." Seeing that his subordinates understood his meaning, Wei Guang didn't want to stay here any longer. With a wave of his hand, he left the courtyard with nearly 30 embroidered uniform guards. However, what he didn't know was that his every move was being watched by someone. On the roof of a courtyard that was almost a street away, someone was using a high-powered telescope to see everything that was happening. The most frightening thing was that the person who was observing could read lips. In other words, the conversation between Wei Guang and Lu Si was also clearly heard by someone else. Young Master is really amazing. He actually thought that it might be the embroidered uniform guards and arranged for us to follow Sir Qianxia. Hee, now that we know that Lu Jian is here, it's easy to handle. Tai Hu put down the high-powered telescope in his hand and revealed a fierce face. The captain of the Wolf Fang Special Forces, Tai Hu, was the one who could read lips and had been observing everything that was happening in the courtyard. In fact, not only Tai Hu, but also the other 19 members of the Wolf Fang Special Forces were proficient in lip reading. This was also the special requirement that Yang Chendong had for them. Since they were the elites of the elites, not only did they have the most advanced weapons in their hands, but they also had to be able to rely on their own abilities. Tai Hu said confidently, but in the eyes of the extremely thin team member beside him, He couldn't help but worry. Tiger King, the sixth young master, said that the embroidered uniform guards are not weak. You must not be careless. Although Wei Guang is gone now, there are at least 10 embroidered uniform guards around. If you are not careful, Lu Jian's life will be lost. If something happens to him, our mission will be considered a failure. Nonsense, this captain doesn't know this point. Do I need you to remind me? All right, Skinny Monkey, hurry up and arrange the mission. Let King Kong, Violent Ape, Silverhand, and Steel Leg get ready. Also, inform Captain Baizhuo of the Ghost Sniper team. Tell them that the opportunity to contribute and kill the enemy has come. Tai Hu said as he slapped the man with the nickname of Skinny Monkey. Skinny Monkey retreated as if he was flying backward. In just a blink of an eye, Skinny Monkey had retreated at least 4 meters away, which also allowed him to avoid Tai Hu's slap. It was obvious that this was not the first time something like this had happened. Skinny Monkey, who had retreated far away, heard that Tai Hu wanted to cooperate with the Ghost Sniper team to complete the mission. He knew that his captain was very careful in doing things even though he said it happily. His heart was relieved. All right, Tiger King, please wait for a moment. I will go and inform them now. Skinny Monkey, who had finished speaking, disappeared from the roof after a few ups and downs. It gave people the feeling that he was moving so fast that it was as if he was teleporting. Gaozhou Prefecture Government Compound. This place was completely surrounded by the mercenaries. Among them, there were a few Ming soldiers who were unwilling to submit and wanted to resist. Following that, they were showered with blows from the mercenaries. They thought that they were strong, but when faced with the angry elite Lung Feng, they were no different from children facing adults. What are you doing? What are you doing? Are you trying to rebel? The sudden attack caught the Ming army off guard. A few of the centurions of the Ming army shouted aggressively, wanting to use their power to suppress the enemy. Bang 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 bang. What greeted this voice was a few powerful fists. The centurions who were shouting just now were soon swollen like pigs. Even when they spoke, their voices were no longer as clear and precise. What's going on? Everyone stop. The commotion here quickly attracted the attention of others. Following that, a loud shout was heard. General Yu Guang, who was fully clad in armor, appeared. When he saw that the people who were beaten up were all his subordinates, even the whiskers on his lips could not help but tremble a few times. Who was the one who attacked just now? Who was it? Stand out if you have the guts. Chapter 420. It's me. What do you want? Luo Pe, the commander of the 2nd Regiment of the Lung Feng Army, walked out of the crowd with the rank of colonel. He looked at Yu Guang with a mocking expression. Commander Luo? Yu Guang groaned in his heart when he recognized the person. From what he knew, this person was the leader of the mercenary army. Since he had stepped forward, the situation must be very bad, right? Could it be that they wanted to rebel like King Min and the others? Yu Guang's expression changed again and again when he had this thought. He knew the strength of the mercenary army. They had fought side by side before. At that time, he felt happy to have such an ally and fought to his heart's content. However, when this person became his opponent, he felt the same pressure on his shoulders. Yu Guang's expression changed again and his aura weakened. When the other Ming soldiers saw this, they couldn't help but lower their heads. Even their commander was about to give in. They didn't know what to do next. As the saying goes, a single soldier can bear the brunt of the enemy, but a whole nest of generals can bear the brunt of the enemy. Yu Guang didn't dare to say anything else. Luo Pe snorted coldly, then glanced at the Ming army in front of him and said, "All soldiers, listen to my orders. If anyone dares to resist, beat him up first. If anyone dares to resist with weapons, we will let them have a taste of bullets." The Lung Feng members standing behind Luo Pe replied in unison. Their aura was truly like a landslide or a tsunami. Okay, 1 battalion will follow me in. The rest will stay outside. Without orders, no one is allowed to leave. After giving the order, Luo Pe strode into the government office. Wherever he went, the Ming soldiers who were originally blocking his way would all move out of his way, afraid that they would provoke him and get beaten up for nothing. Yu Guang originally wanted to stop Luo Pe, but when he saw the murderous aura in his eyes, his legs went soft. He didn't doubt that if he dared to block him, Luo Pe would really kill him. Wasn't Zhaoqing's general, Jia Ping, killed by Yang Chendong? After the incident, the imperial court did not say anything. Could it be that his life was more valuable than others? Yu Guang unconsciously retreated. The other Ming soldiers also retreated with him. It was not until they reached the gates of the inner courtyard that a shout came from behind them. Only then did the Ming soldiers, whose morale was already extremely low, stop. What's going on? What are you all doing? The voice behind Yu Guang was like the sound of nature to him, causing him to involuntarily stop in his tracks. Following which, he quickly turned around. General Ma, the mercenaries suddenly surrounded our magistrate's office. This general tried to reason with them, but they actually attacked us. General, please uphold justice for our brothers. General, please make the decision. The other Ming soldiers followed suit, looking as if they had been greatly wronged. Useless. When Ma Wei saw that Yu Guang only knew how to complain, he couldn't help but feel angry. He thought to himself, if they can attack, can't you guys fight back? However, he naturally couldn't say such words. After all, the mercenaries were considered allies. Moreover, he still wanted to recruit them for his own use. If he really said such words, it would be impossible to recruit them. But no matter what kind of plan he had in mind, since the mercenaries had come knocking on his door, he still had to show his toughness. Otherwise, wouldn't he be looked down upon by others? After softly reprimanding Yu Guang, Ma Wei's gaze landed on Luo Pe. Following which, he sneered, "Isn't this Commander Luo? What's going on? What happened to provoke you to bring an army to surround my magistrate's office? If you can't give me an explanation for this matter, even if you are mercenaries, you will still have to pay the price." Looking at Luo Pe, who was chatting enthusiastically with everyone a while ago, General Ma Wei put down his pride. At that time, he wanted to recruit Luo Pe and wanted some temporary auxiliary soldiers to join his side. Naturally, he could say any kind of soft words and lower his head to anything. However, it was different now. The other party had already killed their way to him. If he still lowered his head, he would be seen as weak. Pay the price? I think you are the ones who have to pay the price. Facing Ma Wei, who was about to flip out, Luo Pe didn't have the slightest bit of fear. He still had his head held high. What? Do you really think you are invincible? Please remember, this is the Southern Ming Empire's territory. How can you be so arrogant in our territory? Men, surround them. Ma Wei saw that Luo Pe still didn't give up even after he had stepped forward. He immediately became angry. No matter what, he was still a general of the Guangdong Guards, a dignified third-grade military general. Since he didn't give him any face, so what if he fought to the death? Lord Guan and Wei Guang have arrived. Just when Luo Pe was about to retaliate and the soldiers on both sides were about to go to war, a shout came from outside the door. Then, Guan Ying and Wei Guang each brought a few subordinates into the courtyard. You came at the right time. The arrival of these two people made Ma Wei sigh in relief. Just now, he was the only one who had to maintain the situation. Now that these two people were here, there was someone to discuss what to do. Most importantly, if something happened, there would be someone to take the blame. You came at the right time. To Ma Wei's surprise, Luo Pe wasn't afraid when he saw the arrival of these two people. Instead, he looked very happy. He even waved his hand and let Lung Feng, who was guarding here, open a path for the two people to lead the soldiers into the courtyard. Guan Ying and Wei Guang, one was an official of the Ministry of War and the other was a Guang of the Brocade Guards. They didn't usually stay in the government office. They came after receiving the news. As the two walked into the courtyard, they frowned and looked at their surroundings with a puzzled expression. What is going on? Commander Luo is also here? I don't know if you can give a reasonable explanation. Even if we treat the mercenaries as friends and allies, you can't do things that hurt each other's feelings for no reason. Guan Ying was still calm and wasn't very angry. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and asked. No one knew what he was thinking. Guan Ying was very clear about the combat strength of the mercenaries. There were only 1,000 Ming soldiers in Gaozhou. If they really fought, they wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between the enemy's teeth. But even so, even if he lost, he didn't lose. Even if he died, he would be a ghost who understood the situation. Just as Guan Ying finished speaking calmly, Wei Guang opened his mouth and said, "What is going on? Can't you see? Moving soldiers into the city without orders is already a violation of the laws of the Ming dynasty. No matter what the reason is, we can't let it go." This was a preemptive strike. Wei Guang, who knew what he had done, spoke in an interrogative tone. He wanted to muddy the waters and put the blame on the other party first. In this way, he would have the initiative in his hands. When Guan Ying heard Wei Guang's words, he frowned. This was clearly putting the blame on them. Wouldn't this be forcing the mercenaries to do something extreme? If this was the case, no one present would be in a good mood. Especially since the Min King's faction was very powerful. Even Guangdong was divided into two. If they were to create such a powerful enemy like the mercenaries, the southern Ming dynasty would really be finished. This was no longer a matter of face. It was a matter of whether the southern Ming dynasty could survive or not. Guan Ying was naturally careful. He glared at Wei Guang, warning him not to speak carelessly. Then he looked towards Luo Per and said, "Commander Luo, this official believes that there must be a reason for you to come here and mobilize so many people. However, may I know what it is for?" Seeing that Guan Ying's words were still considered polite, Luo Per nodded. "All right, since Lord Guan wants to get to the bottom of this, then this commander will tell you. Just over 2 hours ago, one of our mercenary soldiers went missing in the city. This is a provocation to our mercenary army. You must give us an explanation for this matter, otherwise we can only investigate it ourselves. Even if we have to turn the entire city upside down, we must have a conclusion to this matter." A soldier of the mercenaries went missing? Hearing this result, Guan Ying's face was filled with shock. Not only him, even General Ma Wei, who was confused just now, had his mouth wide open. He stood there with an incredulous expression. Wei Guang's heart skipped a beat. His guess was right. These people came for Lu Jian. However, he didn't expect that they would mobilize so many people just because one person went missing. Presumably, that person must know a lot of secrets. As long as he could get through this hurdle, he would be able to obtain first-hand information about the mercenaries. Looking at it this way, all the risks were worth it. Of course, whether the matter would have the result he wanted, it would depend on whether he could get through this hurdle or not. If he could get through it safely, then everything would be easy to discuss. Thinking of this, Wei Guang took half a step forward. He pointed at Luo Per and said, "What? You lost one person and you come looking for us? What kind of logic is this? Who knows if your soldiers are deserters because they're afraid of war? We won't take the blame for this." Seeing Wei Guang jump out first, Luo Per's expression didn't change. He only said sternly, "Wei Guang, please be careful with your words. Our mercenaries will not have any deserters. Don't use your subordinates' methods on us brothers. You can't bear the consequences." Being threatened again, Wei Guang's expression was naturally very ugly. "Luo Per, you should also watch your words. I am a member of the embroidered uniform guard. Outsiders have no right to order me around." Chapter 421. Everyone, please don't get angry. Guan Yingyan saw that Wei Guang's tone was not friendly. He was afraid that if this continued, the two sides would fight before the matter was cleared up. If that happened, the truth would never be revealed. Therefore, he stood up and wanted to be a peacemaker. "Commander Luo, Wei Guang's attitude may not be very good, but what he said is the truth. You want to search the entire city for one missing person. Isn't this too much? If the final result is that you still can't find the person you're looking for after turning the city upside down, how will you explain it then?" Facing Guan Yingyan's question, Luo Per still shook his head expressionlessly. "I can't guarantee whether I can find him or not, but I'm also acting on orders. If anyone dares to stop me, then they are my enemy. It's that simple, so I hope you can make it easy." Acting on orders. The moment these 4 words were said, Guan Yingyan, Ma Wei, and Wei Guang's expressions all changed dramatically. Who was Luo Per? He was the commander of the mercenary army, the most elite commander of the Cold Front. It could be said that he was the highest officer of this mercenary army. If even he had to say that he was acting on orders, then the answer to whose orders he was acting on seemed to be right in front of them. Zhong Dang Duke is here? Guan Yin asked as he took a deep breath in his heart. He's here. Zhong Dang Duke, please. Luo nodded. His task was originally to surround the three lords and the many Ming soldiers here. Since he had already done that, then the next stage was not his own stage, but to be handed over to the sixth young master. Following Luo Po's loud shout, a carriage, under the protection of many able-bodied men, slowly drove into the inner courtyard from the outside. Before this, all the obstacles that prevented the carriage from moving had been cleaned up. In the cellar of the small courtyard, Lu Si, dressed in the uniform of the brocade guard, was still interrogating Lu Jian, who was beaten black and blue and covered in blood. Brother, we were still a family 500 years ago. Just say what you want to say. Why do you have to suffer like this? It really makes my heart ache. Lu Si's voice echoed in Lu Jian's ears. Lu Jian, who was tied up, opened his eyes with great difficulty. His eyelashes fluttered and he seemed to be mumbling something. Seeing that Lu Jian was about to speak, Lu Si hurriedly moved his face closer, wanting to hear what was being said. Suddenly, a mouthful of saliva flew towards his face. Completely caught off guard, Lu Si was spat all over his face. When he sensed that there was blood in the saliva, he wiped it away forcefully before glaring angrily. Brat, you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite. Next, I'll make you beg for death. Men, continue the torture. Lu Si was so enraged that he ignored Lu Jian's injuries and wanted to torture him. He wanted to see if this person was made of iron. Did he really not know what pain was? Boom. Just as he finished speaking, an embroidered uniform guard approached step by step with a thin whip that was dipped in salt water. Suddenly, the cellar door was broken from the outside. Following that, a powerful man appeared in their line of sight. The man was tall and muscular, and his muscular body gave people a feeling of explosive power. As soon as he appeared, he charged forward like a mad bull. First, the embroidered uniform guard with the whip only saw a black shadow getting bigger and bigger in his eyes. Then, before he could do anything to dodge, he felt a sharp pain all over his body. It was as if all his ribs were broken at this moment. His whole body flew backwards because of this. With just one collision, he heavily injured an embroidered uniform guard. Following that, the black shadow rushed towards Lu Si. The sudden change was too fast. It was so fast that Lu Si only managed to grab the spring-embroidered saber at his waist with his right hand before his whole body flew backwards. His ears were filled with the whistling sound of the wind. Only when he hit the wall behind him did he stop. He felt as if all the bones in his body had fallen apart. With a plop, he fell to the ground. In just 2 rounds, the intruder had completely controlled the situation in the cellar. This result made everyone clap their hands in satisfaction. Then, they lightly spat out 4 words, unable to withstand a single blow. The cellar door was once again opened from the outside. Wolf Fong Captain Tai who brought Skinny Monkey and the others out. When he saw the situation in front of him, Skinny Monkey chuckled. Not bad. Violent Ape is indeed violent. You finished the battles so quickly. It's just that these people are too incompetent. Violent Ape said unconcernedly. He looked as if he hadn't had enough fun yet. All right, let's save them first. Then, we'll capture these 2 people and bring them to the young master. Tai who saw that the situation had been settled. The problem in the cellar had been solved. The Ghost Shadow Sniper team had taken action outside and killed all the other embroidered uniform guards. The danger no longer existed. He also let out a sigh of relief. After all, this time they were facing the elite embroidered uniform guards. Moreover, they had hostages in the hands of the other party. If they were careless, it could cause extremely serious consequences and disappoint the young master. Fortunately, the other party wasn't on guard. In addition, they were well prepared. With the help of the Ghost Sniper team, the problem was solved smoothly. At this time, Lu Si still had some strength in his body. He heard Tai Hu's voice in his ears. Immediately, he shouted loudly, "I'm from the Imperial Court's embroidered uniform guards. Who are you? Who allowed you to do this? Do you know that this is a crime that will lead to the confiscation of your family's property and the extermination of your family? You talk too much nonsense." Lu Si was still shouting. Skinny Monkey had already walked over impatiently. He lifted his foot and lightly kicked Lu Si. In an instant, Lu Si stopped moving. Obviously, this kick had knocked him out. The inner court of the magistrate's office. As the luxurious carriage drove in, it quickly began to clear the place. All unrelated people were kicked out. Even the bodyguards beside Guan Ying, Ma Wei, and Wei Guang were not left behind. Regarding this, the three naturally wanted to resist. However, when Qiu Vi led the first guard team to attack, Peng Yu, Ba Daojiang, and the other team members attacked together, how could those people be a match for them? They were either beaten to the ground or half kneeling on the ground with bloody noses and swollen faces. In short, there wasn't a single good person. Seeing that the strength of his subordinates was so weak, Guan Ying straightforwardly ordered everyone to leave. Since they couldn't win, it was better not to test the waters. It would be embarrassing. The inner court finally quieted down. Other than the three so-called Southern Ming officials and the first guard team, there was also the luxurious carriage that had been parked there without any movement. After calming down, Guan Ying decided to face everything that had happened. He cupped his fist and asked in a very respectful tone, "Is the Duke of Loyalty in the carriage?" "It's me." After a short pause, a voice finally came from the carriage. Then the curtain was pulled open by Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei, revealing Yang Chendong, who was wearing a green robe inside. Compared to the last time they met, Yang Chendong's face was pale, his eyes were dull, and his cheekbones seemed to be protruding a little. It was as if he had completely changed into a different person. He was much older. "Duke of Loyalty? What's going on? Why are you so sick?" Seeing Yang Chendong's appearance, Guan Ying was really shocked. He asked in disbelief. I was careless. I was poisoned a while ago. Fortunately, God blessed me. The mercenaries sent me a divine pill to detoxify the poison. That was how I managed to save my life." Yang Chendong's face was pale as he forced a smile. But what followed was a series of rapid coughs. It gave people the feeling that he had tuberculosis and would die from coughing at any time. Yang Chendong's appearance naturally shocked Guan Ying and Ma Wei. At first, they thought that he was looking for an excuse to not meet them because he was sick. But after a long time, they couldn't help but have all kinds of guesses. But in the end, they didn't expect his condition to be so serious. It looked as if he would die at any time. On the other hand, Wei Guang's expression didn't change. On the contrary, he was secretly delighted. What was going on? He probably had the clearest judgment in his heart. This time, he came to Gaozhou Prefecture to see how Yang Chendong's condition was. He didn't expect that after not getting an answer for a long time, he would see hope when he thought there was no hope. Just by looking at it, the Duke of Loyalty was indeed seriously injured. It was the result of Su Muner's attack. But what Wei Guang didn't expect was that if she attacked, he should be dead. How could he still be alive? Could it be that it was like what was said just now, that it was a divine antidote sent by the mercenaries? If that was the case, how many good things did the mercenaries have that they didn't take out? While Wei Guang was still pondering over the crux of the matter, Yang Chendong had already opened his mouth once again. "Sirs, this time the mercenaries had no choice but to act. As you all know, the mercenaries are very protective of their people. Anyone who dares to provoke them will not have a good ending. Now that a person has gone missing, and I heard that it's an officer, it's reasonable that they would be angry. How about this? I will be the middleman and give everyone a chance. If anyone is the one who captured him, stand up and ask for forgiveness now. I can even consider interceding for him. Maybe he can still live. This way, everyone won't be affected. How about it?" As if he forced himself to say these words, Yang Chendong sat in the carriage and panted heavily. Tiger's Mane, who was waiting on him at the side, was anxious. Just a moment ago, the young master was still talking and laughing with them. How long had it been? How could his illness be so serious? This didn't seem like an act. How could an act be so realistic? Chapter 422. In his anxiety, Tiger's mane continued to say, "Young master, your health is more important. You should speak less." Cough. "Young master, I don't want to come out sick, but the bigger picture is more important. I really don't want to see any conflict between the mercenary army and the great Ming dynasty." Yang Chendong struggled to say these words, and then he coughed heavily. "Okay, young master, we understand. We understand." They also heard it. Tiger's mane nodded repeatedly, then suddenly turned around and looked at Guan Ying, Ma Wei, and Wei Guang. He said, "You all heard it clearly. The Duke said that whoever did it should stand up. Don't implicate others, and don't hurt the relationship between the mercenary army and the great Ming dynasty." Tiger's mane's words made Guan Ying and the other two look at each other. At least Guan Ying and Ma Wei didn't want to have any conflicts with the mercenary army, especially when the King of Min's faction was so rampant and crazily expanding. This elite army might be of great use. However, they really didn't know where the missing mercenary soldiers went. Duke of Loyalty and Courage, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but we really don't know where the mercenary soldiers went. How do you want us to hand them over? Is there a misunderstanding? Guan Ying said in a weak tone. That's right. Is there some misunderstanding? Ma Wei chimed in with an innocent look. I think this must be a misunderstanding. You guys are just trying to frame someone. Duke of Loyalty and Courage, we respect your contributions to the Southern Ming dynasty, but you can't ignore us because of this. Let me tell you, this is disrespectful to the Southern Ming dynasty. Wei Guang opened his mouth, and his tone was interrogative. His overbearing attitude was full of arrogance. Bang. Wei Guang, who was speaking, suddenly tilted his body, and then he half knelt on the ground. Then he clenched his teeth in pain, and cold sweat poured down. A gunshot was fired. The one who fired the shot was naturally Yang Chendong. He didn't seem to like the noise, or maybe he was angry that the other party called him Duke of Loyalty and Courage instead of Duke of Loyalty and Courage. In short, he had fired the gun. When the gunshot rang out, Guan Ying and Ma Wei were shocked. Then, they saw that the one who was shot was Wei Guang, and a stream of dark red blood was flowing out from his trousers. Their faces immediately changed. Loyal Duke? What are you doing? Dare I ask, what did Wei Chan do to make you want to kill him? It was Ma Wei who asked. Then, Guan Ying also expressed his stance. Duke Zhongdan, no matter what it is, we can sit down and have a good talk. If you do this, I really can't explain it to the higher-ups. You've caused trouble. Guan Ying and Ma Wei had such an attitude because of Wei Guang's noble status. They were members of the embroidered uniform guards, and even they had to be courteous to them. Secondly, he was also considered an official of the imperial court. If he attacked an official for no reason, and did it in public, he would definitely be held accountable. Yang Chendong was no longer an imperial envoy. He no longer had the power to control the Southern Ming officials at any time. Got into trouble? Yes, I did get into trouble, but it's not me, it's him. Yang Chendong's voice rang out again. Tiger's mane, have they arrived? Bring them up. Yes, Tiger's mane replied. He turned around and saw Chiu Vi lightly nodding. Good, bring them up. Yang Chendong's calmness and Tiger's mane's unhurried manner fell into the eyes of Guan Ying, Ma Wei, and the kneeling Wei Guang, causing them to have a look of confusion. Only Ma Wei's heart involuntarily skipped a beat. Then he shook his head forcefully. It was impossible. The place where Lu Jian was imprisoned was very hidden. It was impossible to find him so quickly. Besides, he had already instructed Lu Si to silence him if things went wrong. What was there to be afraid of? It must be something else. It must be. Comforting himself, Wei Guang's expression became much calmer. When he raised his head again, he had already recovered his initial calmness. However, all of this calmness instantly crumbled when he saw the people being escorted in. Lu Si, who was wearing a turquoise brocade robe, was escorted out. At the same time, a few brocade guard brothers who had stayed behind to guard the courtyard were also escorted out. Wei Guang could even name these people. As soon as they appeared, he felt as if his head had been blown off. The person who was brought over was indeed Lu Si. Originally, his head had been lowered, thinking that he was definitely going to die. However, when he raised his head and saw Wei Guang, who was wearing a large red python robe, a flying fish robe, a black gauze hat, a belt around his waist, and an embroidered spring saber at his waist, his originally dim and lifeless eyes instantly lit up. "Boss, save me, save me." "They saved Lu Jian and killed a few of our brothers." Lu Si's shouts continued, but at this time, everyone's gaze naturally fell on Wei Guang. Even Guan Ying and Ma Wei, who did not know what had happened before, understood at this moment what had happened. They also finally knew that someone had kidnapped the mercenary soldiers, and the mastermind behind this was Wei Guang. The soldiers were kidnapped. No wonder the mercenaries were so angry and mobilized so many people. At this moment, Guan Ying and Ma Wei seemed to understand the mercenaries' actions. However, their understanding was one thing, and they would definitely not express any opinions on this matter. The brocade guard was one of the most trusted subordinates of the emperor. How could others meddle with it? Even if they did something wrong, there would definitely be someone from above to vouch for them. It was not something that military officials of their level could interfere. Since they could not interfere, they could only stand aside and watch the show. From a certain point of view, Guan Ying and Ma Wei were even happy to see Wei Guang suffer. "Shut up." Hearing that Lu Si's shouts had no intention of stopping, Wei Guang endured the gunshot wound on his leg and yelled loudly. Then, he looked at Yang Chendong in the luxurious carriage and said with a strong appearance, "That's right, we captured him. It was only because he violated the laws of the Ming dynasty that we had to capture him. But you guys, why did you dare to kill the brothers of the brocade guard? Do you know how big of a crime this is?" Bang. Just as Wei Guang wanted to gain the upper hand by a show of strength and wanted to question Yang Chendong, another gunshot rang out. The unprepared Wei Guang's left leg was also shot. He was originally half kneeling, but now he was completely kneeling on both knees and became shorter. How bold, capturing a mercenary soldier for no reason and still daring to argue with reason. You really deserve to be killed. Yang Chendong's face turned ashen. Perhaps it was because his body was too weak or because he was really angry, but his face gave people a terrifying feeling. When Yang Chendong said that he deserved to be killed, Tiger's Mane nodded his head and nodded towards Ba Daojiang and Peng Yu of the first guard team. The two of them strode to the kneeling Wei Guang and lifted him into the air with one arm each. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" "I am the commander of the brocade guard, Xianxia. I was personally appointed by the emperor. I am an official of the imperial court. You have no right to do anything to me, no." As if he felt something, Wei Guang struggled and shouted loudly, explaining the severity of the situation. "Deal with them one by one, from small to large." Cough. Yang Chendong didn't pay attention to the shouting Wei Guang, but after saying this to Hu Mang, he leaned back, gasping, and his chest was constantly undulating at this moment. "Young master, you need to take care of your body." Hu Mang blurted out this sentence unconsciously. It seemed that Yang Chendong's acting was too good, and he was speaking from his own feelings. However, Guan Ying and Ma Wei, who were about to plead for leniency, shut their mouths when they heard this. Yang Chendong was sick like this. Logically speaking, he should be recuperating, but he still walked out. This showed how important this matter was. Wei Guang brought this upon himself. If they pleaded now, it would seem that this matter had something to do with them. But who knew if the angry Yang Chendong would take care of them as well? Since it was none of his business, he could just let it go. If there were any benefits to be gained from telling him, he could still take the risk and give it a try. But the people of the embroidered uniform guards had always been ungrateful. Even if they spoke up for him now, when they committed a crime in the future, they would not be lenient. If that was the case, why take the risk? No one spoke up for Wei Guang and the others. Tiger's Mane was naturally more straightforward when it came to doing things. First, he and Beta Persei each took a machete. Then, they came in front of the ordinary embroidered uniform guards who were brought here. With a raise of their right arm, their heads were separated from their bodies. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei took turns to kill the other embroidered uniform guards. When it was Beta Persei's turn to raise his machete to kill Lu Si, he actually wet his pants. Then he shouted loudly, "Don't kill me, I know who poisoned the Duke of Loyalty." Beta Persei, who had already raised his machete and was about to swing it down, suddenly stopped. It was as if he had been immobilized. "Lu Si, do you not want to live anymore? Aren't you afraid that all 9 generations of your family will be executed?" Wei Guang, who was still emphasizing his identity to intimidate others not to touch him, suddenly heard Lu Si's words. His expression changed drastically, and cold sweat flowed down his face. As a trusted aide, Lu Si had heard Wei Guang mention when he was drunk about the plan of the commander sending Su Munaer to kill Yang Chendong. After he sobered up, Wei Guang even thought of silencing him. But at that time, Lu Si knelt on the ground and swore that he would never speak of this matter. Otherwise, he would die a horrible death. In the end, Wei Guang spared his subordinate's life. Perhaps he also thought that Lu Si would not dare to speak of such an important matter because once it was spread, he would definitely die. Chapter 423. But who would have thought that he would finally say it in front of so many people? The consequences would be unimaginable. Wei Guang still wanted to say something to scare him, but Pring Yu and Ba Daojiang, who were sandwiching him, received a signal from Tiger's Mane and each of them punched him in the stomach. The intense pain made him shut his mouth immediately and groan in pain. Wei Guang did not speak, but Lu Si stood there and laughed loudly. "Execute my entire family? I'm sorry, but my ancestral home is Yunnan's Cheli department. When the Min king rebelled, everyone in my family was killed. No one was spared, so I'm the only one left. What's there to be afraid of?" Lu Si seemed to be venting something. After shouting, he suddenly turned to look at the side of the carriage and fell to his knees. "This lowly one is Lu Si, serving in the brocade guard. I have done many heinous things. I know that I have sinned deeply. However, the heavens are virtuous. I want to turn over a new leaf and start anew. I hope that the Duke of Loyalty can give this lowly one a chance. The heavens are indeed benevolent. Tell me everything you know. As long as it's true, I'll let you live. I'll even give you enough money to live the rest of your life. But remember, don't try to bite me. Otherwise, don't blame my gun for not recognizing you." Yang Chendong's voice slowly came out. Then, the carriage turned around and faced the direction where Lu Si knelt on the ground. As the carriage turned around, he gave a signal to Tiger's Mane. "Thank you, Duke of Loyalty, for your understanding," Lu Si said with a slightly emotional tone. He believed that since the Duke of Loyalty had made a promise in front of so many people, his life should be saved. With the thought of surviving a calamity, he raised his head and said loudly, "Loyal Duke, the people who wanted to take your life were the embroidered uniform guards. They were afraid that your contributions were too great and would endanger the Emperor, Pucci." Lu Si seemed to want to continue speaking, but a steel saber had already pierced through his back. The tip of the saber continued to drip blood after piercing through his chest. Lu Si used the last of his strength to look sideways. When he saw that the person who killed him was actually his superior, Wei Guang, there was a strong unwillingness in his eyes. After smacking his lips twice, he leaned back heavily with his eyes staring at the sky. He couldn't be more dead than he already was. The person who killed Lu Si was Wei Guang. Just now, for some reason, Pring Yu and Ba Daojiang, who were originally holding him down, suddenly loosened their grip, giving him a chance to catch his breath. Then he heard Lu Si's voice. How could Wei Guang listen to him when he was telling the truth? Lu Si no longer had any relatives. Naturally, he was not afraid of being executed. However, his family members were all in Nanjing. If something really happened to them and he died, what about his family members? For his family, Wei Guang, who forced himself to take a breath, suddenly flew up and used the last trace of internal qi in his body to stab Lu Si, who was telling the truth, through his heart. Lu Si was finally dead. Although before he died, he said that it was the genie guards who killed Yang Chendong. Fortunately, he didn't say the real mastermind behind the scenes. Everything was delayed. Wei Guang let out a long sigh of relief in his heart. When he raised his head to look at Yang Chendong, his voice was fierce and resolute as he said, "That's right, I did it. I arranged for someone to poison you. I just didn't expect your life to be so tough that you still didn't die. But it doesn't matter. It seems that you only have half of your life left. You will spend the rest of your life in pain. In this way, my goal has been achieved. I have achieved it." After saying this, Wei Guang, who was laughing, suddenly put the spring embroidery saber across his neck, as if he was going to die. "Hurry up and take the saber." Yang Chendong shouted anxiously. But in the end, it was still too late. Without waiting for the others to do anything, the saber had already slit its owner's neck. Then, blood splattered. Wei Guang fell to the ground with a plop, without a trace of life or breath. Wei Guang had committed suicide. This scene made Guan Ying and Ma Wei's hearts jump. The change in front of their eyes was so fast that it was completely out of their expectations. However, they quickly calmed down and thought through everything. For Guan Ying, he even had a draft in his mind on how he was going to report today's matter to the court. It was nothing more than Wei Guang, who was jealous of the Duke of Loyalty's contributions, sending people to poison him. Then, seeing that he didn't die, he sent people to capture the mercenary soldiers, wanting to know how deeply the Duke of Loyalty had been poisoned. However, everything was discovered by the Duke of Loyalty. Then he committed suicide in front of everyone. Regardless of what Guan Ying and Ma Wei thought, after seeing Wei Guang commit suicide, the resentment in Yang Chendong's heart could be considered to have been vented a little. Su Munair had already said that the person who arranged for her to come to Yang Chendong's side and asked her to wait for an opportunity to make a move. The person who sent the poison bun was the commander of the embroidered uniform guards, Menda. This time, Wei Guang came to the sect to clarify this matter. The embroidered uniform guards were the emperor's personal guards. Only the emperor had the authority to kill the people there. Otherwise, no matter how heinous the crime was, it wasn't something that others could casually touch. It was the same for Yang Chendong. Although he already had a certain level of strength and could be said to be above many other officials, if he killed Wei Guang, it would be equivalent to giving Zhu Qizhen a big slap in the face. Yang Chendong wasn't willing to do such a thankless thing unless it was absolutely necessary. As such, Wei Guang committing suicide was naturally the best outcome. As for why he was able to break free from Peng Yu and Ba Daozhang's restraints and kill Lu Si with his crippled legs, it was naturally the result after Yang Chendong gave Tiger's Mane a hint with his eyes. In these few years, the tacit understanding between the two was still very strong. Yang Chendong didn't need Lu Si to tell the truth because he already knew the truth. On the other hand, if the truth was revealed, would he seek revenge on Menda? If he did, would Zhu Qizhen have any thoughts and allow such a thing to happen? As such, this was the current scene. Wei Guang killed Lu Si and then committed suicide. Yang Chendong could remove himself from this matter completely and also take the opportunity to knock Menda and Zhu Qizhen down, letting them know how difficult it was to kill him. This time, they were lucky to pass, but they might not be so lucky next time. Since his goal had been achieved, Yang Chendong naturally didn't need to stay here. Waving his hand, Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei put down the curtains of the carriage, and then the large group of people left the magistrate court and Gaozhou prefecture. Along the way, neither Guan Ying nor Ma Wei stood out to say anything. Yang Chendong was indeed sick, and it was quite serious. This was all seen with their own eyes. Not to mention, this illness was poisoned by the brocade guards. As such, how could they still ask Yang Chendong to leave with the mercenaries? Not to mention, now that the King of Min was powerful, they still pointed at Yang Chendong in their hearts as a shield. They believed that with the existence of these mercenaries, even if the King of Min wanted to conquer Gaozhou and Laizhou, he would have to consider the strength of these mercenaries first. They successfully returned to their own military camp. Yang Chendong was completely different from before. His illness had long disappeared, and when he appeared in front of everyone, he was full of energy. "How is Lu Jian?" Yang Chendong asked Tiger's Mane as he walked towards the infirmary. "Young master, Lu Jian only suffered some superficial injuries. He will be fine after a good rest." Oh yes, he didn't say anything when he was tortured by the brocade guards. He is really a tough man. Tiger's Mane said with a face full of admiration. Not bad, no wonder he can become the platoon leader of the auxiliary troops. Tell him that after he recovers, let him report to the Cold Front Regiment. He has already passed the loyalty test. Yang Chendong nodded satisfactorily, then opened the tent of the infirmary. He saw Lu Jian, who had already fainted, but his facial features still gave off a sense of determination. Looking at Lu Jian, who was almost covered in wounds, Yang Chendong sighed and said, "Look, this is our warrior. How brave and tenacious. This is a true man. Tell all the Cold Front Regiment and auxiliary troops to learn from Lu Jian. Also, give Lu Jian a silver medal. This is the reward he deserves." Hearing about the silver medal, Tiger's Mane nodded heavily. That is indeed the case. I will pass down the young master's order immediately. At this moment, Lu Jian was still in a coma. However, if he woke up and heard these words, he would definitely be extremely excited. One must know that the military medal not only represented personal glory, but it could also be converted into cash when faced with difficulties. This was set by Yang Chendong before he announced the medal system. This was because he was afraid that the country's heroes would face difficulties one day. If that really happened, a high-grade medal could be exchanged for a large amount of silver, enough to solve most problems and difficulties. 1451 AD, late July. After more than 10 days of bumpy travel, Kuang Yi, the southern Ming crown prince and minister of war, finally arrived at Gaozhou prefecture of Guangdong. The reason why it was a few turns was because some of the cities from Nanjing to here were already occupied by the king of Min. He had to change his route several times along the way. Kuang Ye's entry into Gaozhou prefecture was a secret. Even his journey was very secretive. No one knew if the king of Min had placed any spies in southern Ming. If the route was made public, who knew how many times he would have to face assassination? It was even uncertain if he could safely reach Gaozhou prefecture. Because it was hidden, when Kuang Yi suddenly appeared in Gaozhou prefecture, it really shocked Guan Ying and Ma Wei. Chapter 424. The journey was too long, and the journey was not peaceful. The news that Kuang Yi had regained his power and was promoted half a rank hadn't reached here yet. So when he saw Kuang Yi appear, Guan Ying's face was full of shock. His first feeling was that his teacher had been kicked out of the capital by Ying Zong. "Greetings, Lord Kuang." Ma Wei also broke out in a cold sweat. He also didn't know what had happened to this old minister recently. However, since he was here, he still had to be respectful. After leaving here, he would immediately send someone to the capital to find out more about Kuang Yi. Kuang Ye's eyes fell on the two's expressions. This old man who was over 60 years old was extremely wise and far-sighted. With a single glance, he saw through the two's thoughts. Chuckling, he said, "Generals, there is no need to be surprised. This old man came to Gaozhou prefecture under the emperor's orders. All right. The emperor empathized with my loyalty and bravery and specially conferred me the title of Grand Tutor to the Crown Prince." Guan Ying Ma became excited when he heard the Crown Prince's words. He clasped his hands and said, "Congratulations, teacher." "Congratulations, Lord Kuang." Ma Wei also quickly changed the way he addressed Kuang Yi. He no longer called him Lord Kuang like before, but Minister Kuang. "Congratulations to you too." Kuang Ye's wrinkled face smiled. He had seen Ma Wei's performance just now. His attitude towards these people was only perfunctory. Firstly, this was not a direct descendant that he had nurtured, and secondly, the other party was the commander of the Guangdong Guards, a martial official of the 3 ranks. If he was too close to the other party, once this news reached the court and reached the emperor's ears, who knew what kind of adverse effects it would bring? Maintaining a certain distance and only maintaining the relationship of a superior and subordinate was how an evergreen official should behave. "Teacher, something happened a few days ago. I have secretly reported it to the imperial court, but I don't think you know about it." After the pleasantries, Guan Ying said carefully, "What is it?" Kuang Yi had a bad feeling when he heard that Guan Ying had secretly reported it to the imperial court. He knew that ordinary small matters couldn't be reported, especially when the situation was so unstable. Trivial matters couldn't be reported. He also understood Guan Ying's character. Guan Ying was farsighted and would not be entangled over such a small matter. Now that Guan Ying had brought it up in such a serious manner, it could not be anything good. Teacher, Wei Guang of the Imperial Court's brocade guard has died. He committed suicide in front of us. The reason for his death was... Although he didn't know why Kuang Yi was here, given the current situation, if the Minister of War didn't stay in the capital to organize and command the army, but instead came to Gaozhou, a place that seemed like it was about to be abandoned, something big must have happened. Based on his analysis and intuition, Guan Ying believed that it had something to do with Yang Chendong and the mercenaries. Therefore, he first told him about Yang Chendong being poisoned. Guan Ying was indeed capable. At the very least, he had good foresight. After he finished speaking, he saw the shock on Kuang Ye's face. Wait, what did you say? Was the Duke of Loyalty poisoned? Wei Guang even admitted that he did it? Well, Minister, you must be tired from traveling so far. I will go arrange for a banquet. When Ma Wei heard this, his expression changed again and again. He felt that the teacher and disciple had something important to talk about. It was really awkward for him to stand there with his status, so he found an excuse to leave. Kuang Yi was very satisfied with Ma Wei's tactfulness. However, his thoughts were more on Yang Chendong. Guan Ying, how is the Duke of Loyalty? Not too good. I took a look at him that day. His complexion was not good, and his body was very weak, Guan Ying answered honestly. What should we do? Hearing that Yang Chendong's body was in such a bad state, Kuang Ye's expression was full of hatred. He had seen Yang Chendong countless times. This kind of young man seemed to always have an inexhaustible amount of energy. Even a small illness would not affect his body. However, from Guan Ying's description, he seemed to be like a lamp that had run out of oil. One could imagine how severe the poison was. Thinking that the Southern Ming Empire's hopes were mostly placed on Yang Chendong, if something really happened to him, there would be no link between the Southern Ming Empire and the mercenary army. For the current situation, it was definitely not a good thing. He said angrily, "What do the imperial bodyguards want to do? Get rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness?" Wei Guang alone would not have such ability and courage. There must be someone behind him. However, they did not think about it. If something really happened to Yang Chendong, who would be able to quell the Min King's rebellion? The person behind this is really... At this point, Kuang Yi stopped talking because he suddenly thought of the person behind the Imperial Secret Service. For a big matter like dealing with Yang Chendong, without that person's permission, normal people would not have the guts to act on their own. Could it be that this was really his intention? Once the thought appeared in his mind, it could not be dismissed. Thinking about it carefully, that person did have a reason to act. Yang Chendong was ultimately too young and so capable. The existence of such a person was originally a huge threat and pressure. The emperor was still young, but once he grew old and that person was still alive, would his descendants be able to suppress Yang Chendong? If they could not, what would happen? What Yang Chendong lacked now was experience and enough merit. However, he was still young. Once he was given enough power, these could be made up for. Once he had everything he needed, it would be even more difficult to control him. This led to the poisoning incident after the Huang bandit army incident was over. It seemed to make more sense. There was another problem. If it was really his intention, why did he not tell him when he received the order to come this time? Even if it was just a hint, it would be good, right? He would not let him be in such a passive position, right? It wasn't impossible to think of other ways to solve this problem. Now that he had come to Gaozhou Prefecture and was seen by so many people, it would not be long before Yang Chendong received the news. When that time came, what should he do? If he did not meet the other party, how should he talk? The emperor was afraid of him and wanted to poison him. Would he still dare to put such a person in an important position? For a moment, countless questions rose in Kuang Ye's mind, causing him to feel a headache. He originally thought that after coming to Gaozhou Prefecture and seeing Yang Chendong and promising him many benefits, he would have a chance to persuade this person to help him. But now, it seemed that everything was going to be overturned. He also felt helpless. Teacher, teacher. Seeing that Kuang Yi seemed to be in a daze, Guan Ying carefully called out to him. HM? What's wrong? Kuang Yi regained his senses and asked Guan Ying. Teacher, you must have an important mission for coming here this time, but I wonder what the mission is? If you want to put the Duke of Loyalty in an important position, shouldn't you reconsider? Guan Ying did not go into too much detail. But to smart people, there was no need to be so thorough. Many times, it was best to stop at a certain point. That's right. Kuang Yi nodded, then said, Come, bring me a brush and ink. This official wants to explain everything that happened here to the emperor, then send someone to send it out at the fastest speed possible. The news of Kuang Ye's arrival in Gaozhou Prefecture was immediately reported by the city's security bureau to the mercenary camp 5 li outside the city. Tiger's Mane excitedly brought the news to the military tent. When he saw Yang Chendong, he excitedly said, Young master, Minister Kuang Yi is here. As you expected, we will be of great use. He's finally here? After hearing this, Yang Chendong's expression was calm as if everything was within his expectations. But then he shook his head. Things have changed. Wei Guang's death and the words that Lu Si said before he died, even if we don't care, I'm afraid that others will. Sigh, it seems that if we want the plan to go smoothly, we have to continue pretending to be sick. Continue pretending to be sick? Tiger's Mane asked with a puzzled expression. Tiger's Mane, young master, let me ask you. In your heart, are you afraid of a lively enemy or a sick enemy who could die at any time? Hearing Yang Chendong's question, Tiger's Mane was puzzled, but he still answered instinctively, of course it's a lively enemy. But what does this have to do with us? Tiger's Mane, who had just finished speaking, immediately shut his mouth. Obviously, he had thought of something. Seeing Tiger's Mane's enlightened expression, Yang Chendong laughed and said, Okay, you're not too stupid. Okay, go and inform the brothers in the 1st and 2nd guards. Tell them that once Kuang Yi comes, tell them to act more angry and sad. As for what to do, go and teach them. I saw that your performance last time was very good. Hearing this new mission, Tiger's Mane said with a bitter face, Young master, it's not that my performance was good, but your acting last time was too good, so much so that I believed it was true. Alright, then let's do as you say. Yang Chendong laughed loudly. He casually sent Tiger's Mane away, then picked up the pen and continued to write a letter home. The letter was written to Su Maner, who had already been sent to Crimson City. The two of them had only been together for a short while, but because of some things, they had no choice but to separate. They were like newlyweds. It was impossible to say that they did not miss each other. Of course, writing a letter to Su Maner was not a privilege that only she enjoyed. For example, 2nd Madam Qiao Yin and 4th Madam Lady Xiang, who were in the Yang family manor in the capital, would also communicate with Yang Chendong from time to time. Even Luan Xiaoyu, who had always been in Crimson City, would also communicate with Yang Chendong from time to time. But this time, when he wrote to Su Maner, Yang Chendong did not say any words of love. Instead, he told her in detail about how he had pretended to be poisoned. He also said that he had arranged for people to keep an eye on the capital and Nanjing of the southern Ming dynasty. He wanted to see if there was anyone who could redress the Su family's reputation. If there was, then it was worth it for him to pretend to be sick. On the other hand, it would mean that the other party did not keep their promises. Since that was the case, he would have to seek justice himself. Chapter 425. Early the next morning, an unexpected guest arrived at the mercenaries' camp. Guan Ying and Ma Wei were standing behind the old man. As soon as they appeared, the gate of the mercenary camp was opened. Commander Luo came to greet them in person. Greetings, Minister Kuang. Tiger's Mane stepped forward and saluted. My young master knew that you would come, so he asked me to wait here to greet you. Please come with me. Kuang Yi nodded and then said to Guan Ying and Ma Wei behind him, You two stay here. When you have time, you can learn how to lead troops from Commander Luo. I'm going to visit Duke Shongdan. Teachers. Guan Ying seemed to be worried and wanted to say something, but Kuang Yi waved his hand and then followed Tiger's Mane to the depths of the camp. In the largest tent, Yang Chendong had finished his makeup, which made Hu Yen and Madame Shui exclaim in surprise. Lu Lang, your skill is so powerful. It really looks like you have suffered a serious internal injury. Hu Yen looked amazed, and her hand couldn't help but touch Yang Chendong's face. Yang Chendong quickly dodged to the left and right to avoid her touch. Yang Chendong had practiced the art of makeup a lot in his previous life. Sometimes, in order to complete a task, he had to disguise himself as various people. Not only did he have to look good, but he also had to learn how to disguise himself. Otherwise, how could he fool others? Yes, my husband looks so haggard now. If I didn't know the truth, I would believe it. Madame Shui also stared at Yang Chendong's face, trying to find a flaw. However, no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't find the problem. It seemed that Yang Chendong was really sick. No matter how thick-skinned he was, Yang Chendong felt a little embarrassed when the two women stared at him like this. He changed the topic and said, "Your husband is well prepared. It will depend on your performance later. You always talk about how good you are at acting. This time, it's time to test you. Don't screw up." "What do you mean by screw up?" Hu Yen asked with interest. "It means don't screw up," Yang Chendong explained awkwardly. "Oh, then we won't let you down," Hu Yen and Madame Shui said in unison. They understood what Madame Shui said. At this moment, Beta Persei rushed in. "Young Master, Tiger's Head and Minister Qi are here." Oh! As soon as he said this, there was a sad cry. Who else could it be but Hu Yen and Madame Shui? The show began. After a smile appeared on Yang Chendong's mouth, his body also lay down on the bed. It seemed that even breathing was very laborious. Yang Air stared at the scene in front of him with his mouth agape. He thought to himself, as expected, birds of a feather flock together. Look, this family is full of acting experts. I still have to learn from them. But I don't know if I can learn a thing or two from them in this life. Outside the tent, Hu Mang finally led Kuang Yi into the tent, and what he saw was this very sad scene. There were cries and sighs, and there was even blood in the spittoon beside the bed. It seemed that Yang Chendong had just vomited blood not long ago. "A loyal and courageous duke, how did you become like this?" Even though he was mentally prepared, he had heard Guan Ying explain Yang Chendong's condition in detail yesterday. But this morning he still came to take a look because he was worried. Originally, he came with doubts, but the moment he entered the tent, the situation changed completely. He even felt sad for some reason. He could not help but think that some people were too much. This was a hero of the Southern Ming Empire. How could they treat him like this? Beta Persei lowered his head and said nothing. He moved a chair to the side of the bed, as if to let Kuang Yi sit down. But the sound of the chair slamming on the ground showed his attitude towards Kuang Yi. He was extremely unwelcome. Beta Persei? Yang Chendong, who was on the bed, opened his eyes with great effort and scolded softly. Then he forced a smile and said to Kuang Yi, "Minister Qi is here. Take a seat. You can leave too." With the help of Hu Yen and Lady Shui, Yang Chendong got up with great effort and sat down with his back against a large futon. Then, Hu Yen and the others tactfully left. Beta Persei did not want to leave, but Yang Chendong said, "You can leave. Minister Qi is a good person. He won't harm me." Beta Persei reluctantly left the tent. Kuang Ye's face turned red when he heard that he wouldn't harm him. Of course, he knew what Yang Chendong meant. Kuang Yi felt sad when he thought about how the originally handsome and lively young man had been plotted against and ended up like this. He thought about how he had been wronged when he was ordered to stay at home to recuperate. The words, "Heaven's might is unpredictable," involuntarily entered Kuang Ye's heart. Although he felt indignant, in Kuang Ye's heart, the emperor was the emperor. He could not let anyone question him, not even himself. After suppressing the complicated emotions in his heart, he looked at Yang Chendong with a face full of concern. "Duke Zhongdan, regarding the matter of Wei Guang's poisoning, I have already written an urgent letter to the capital. I will definitely give you an explanation. Forget it. He's already dead. Besides, Minister Kuang, do you really think he has the guts to do all this?" Yang Chendong's question hit the nail on the head, leaving Kuang Yi speechless. If he said no, it would be the same as criticizing the emperor. If he said yes, it would be an insult to his and Yang Chendong's intelligence. This was a question that couldn't be answered and couldn't be answered. Kuang Yi sighed and did not dwell on this question. Instead, he spoke in a comforting tone for Yang Chendong. Duke Zhongdan, you have been wronged recently. I also heard that some people are still calling you Duke of Loyalty and Courage. I was angry about this and gave the order. Although your title of Duke of Loyalty and Courage was given by King Yu, since we have recognized him as the Daizong, his title is naturally reasonable. If anyone dares to call him that in the future, you can punish them. Kuang Yi was trying to comfort Yang Chendong by saying that he was on Yang Chendong's side. However, he was only on Yang Chendong's side psychologically. Many people would often say, "You are a good person, and I support you spiritually." However, Yang Chendong did not need such a good person card. Politics was not a game. It was not a matter of, good for you, good for me, good for everyone. In order to achieve their own ideals, those who opposed could become mortal enemies. It was common to even fight with swords. Just because you're a good person, how can you lower your head and accept everything when you've been wronged? Therefore, after listening to Kuang Ye's words, Yang Chendong quickly counterattacked. Sigh, it's just a title of duke. It's not like Prince Shiping was given the title of prince. There's no need to be so calculative. A cold breath came from the bottom of his heart and went straight to his head. Kuang Yi widened his eyes and looked at Yang Chendong in disbelief. There was hesitation and doubt in his eyes, but more than that, there was fear and horror. This young man actually wanted the title of prince and envied Prince Mubin of Shiping. However, did he not know that since the establishment of the Great Ming Dynasty, Mubin was the only prince with a different surname who was still alive? There was only one prince after so many years. Yang Chendong actually wanted to be one of them. His courage and desire were beyond the reach of ordinary people. It was no wonder that the emperor was wary of him. For such an ambitious person, even if Kuang Yi was in the emperor's position, he would also be wary of him. He might even do something regardless of the consequences. Kuang Yi was stunned. In Yang Chendong's eyes, he forced a smile on his pale face. Minister Kuang, it's just a joke. You don't believe it, do you? How could that be? This old man was just amazed by the courage of the Duke of Loyalty and Courage. Kuang Yi chuckled perfunctorily. However, in his heart he thought, who would believe that you are joking? How can some things be taken as a joke? In just a few words, Yang Chendong had already stated his expectations. This also made Kuang Yi realize that after using him last time, he threw him to the side and even sent someone to poison him. He was afraid that he had already hurt his feelings. If he wanted to use him to send troops, he would have to pay a heavy price. The position of prince was one of the requirements. Even though he had expected Yang Chendong to demand an exorbitant price when he invited him again, he did not expect such an outrageous request. At this moment, even Kuang Yi wanted to retreat. Today's trip was to see the condition of Yang Chendong's body. If possible, he wanted to test whether he could continue to lead the mercenaries to work for the Great Ming Dynasty. He originally thought that it would be difficult to achieve the second requirement. After all, it was a bit comical to talk about sending troops in front of a sick person. However, Yang Chendong's initiative allowed these two requirements to be met. It was just that the results were not very satisfactory. As if he knew that Kuang Ye's probing had achieved its goal, or perhaps Yang Chendong's body was really not good and he had reached his body's limit for receiving guests for so long. At this moment, he began to cough again and could not stop. This caused Hu Yen and the others, who were waiting outside the tent, to quickly rush in. Chapter 426. As soon as these people came in, Kuang Yi knew that he had to leave. He wanted to see if there were any other ways to solve the problem. But when he saw Yang Chendong's attitude and his current physical condition, he knew that it was meaningless to say anything more. Kuang Yi left. Just like when he came, Tiger's mane sent him out of the barracks. Yang Chendong stopped coughing, shook his head and said, It's hard work to pretend to be sick. I hope I can fool this old guy. His words made both Hu Yen and Madame Shui laugh. This was their husband. When he was serious, he was a little scary, but sometimes he was very cute. Yang Chendong did this to deceive Kuang Yi, and he also took the opportunity to put forward his request. In fact, Kuang Yi was indeed deceived. Yang Chendong's makeup skills were too good, or it could be said that the things in the warehouse were too good, so good that they could not be found in this era. That was why he could deceive everyone. Teacher, how is Duke Zhongdan's condition? On the way back to the city, Guan Ying asked in a low voice. When he saw Kuang Ye's gloomy face after leaving the barracks, he felt a little nervous. After all, a while ago, he was not respectful to Yang Chendong and even wanted to trick him. What he did was likely to ruin his teacher's plan, and he was a little worried about it. He's really sick, Kuang Yi answered in a low voice, and the image of Yang Chendong's terminally ill flashed in his mind. I wonder if I can still lead troops into battle? Guan Ying continued to ask in a low voice. This was the main point he was concerned about. He had already received the news that King of Min's faction had begun to deploy troops and generals while stabilizing the current results. They were preparing to expand the results of the war. As one of the occupied areas, Guangdong was obviously intolerable. That was to say, even if they did not take the initiative to attack, it would not be long before King Min took the initiative to deal with them. Lead the army to fight? Kuang Yi shook his head. Who knows? However, if you want him to fight, you have to agree to one of his conditions. You have to become a king like Shiping Wang Mubin. Kuang Yi whispered when he saw that no one else was around. What? Crowned king? Guan Ying almost couldn't hold himself back and yelled out. However, he quickly shut his mouth. From his expression, it could be seen that he was frightened as well. Who was Mu Bin? He was the descendant of the Mu family, and had been loyal for generations. He was forced to be a king because he was going to pacify Yunnan this time. However, from the looks of it now, it did not seem to be of much use. This was because the commander-in-chief knew that the failure of Dong Xing, this stupid teammate, had prevented him from unleashing his full strength. But in any case, Mu Bin, who was crowned as a king, was like a nail nailed to the back of King of Min, so that they could not attack Nanjing with all their strength. From this point of view, the crowning as a king had some effect. Who was Yang Chendong? Although he was also the descendant of the Yang family, and was also a loyal family, he just saved the leader of the mercenaries by coincidence. He did not have any real power in his hands, so why should he be a king? Of course, it was a bit too much to say why. After all, Yang Chendong saved Ingzong's life, and defeated the Walla's invasion on behalf of Ingzong. Now, he had the merit of pacifying the chaos in Guangdong, which was also a great achievement. But because of this, he could not be a king casually. Everything was because he was too powerful. He was so powerful that it was a little scary. Unlike Mu Bin, whose influence was only in Yunnan, he was nothing outside of Yunnan. Because of Yang Chendong's power, once he was crowned as a king, it was hard to predict what the consequences would be. Thinking of this, Guan Ying did not dare to say anything. And these were also seen by Kuang Yi. He could not help but sigh in his heart. There were some people in the great Ming dynasty who were crowned as kings, such as Zhongshan Prince Su De, Kaiping Prince Chang Yuchen, Chiang Prince Li Wenzhong, Ningyi Prince Deng Yu, Dongou Prince Tang He, Qianing Prince Mu Ying, and now Shiping Prince Mu Bin. But except for the last one, the others were all crowned as kings after they died. Yang Chendong was a living person. When he thought of living people, he could not help but think of Yang Chendong's weak body. Kuang Yi thought in his heart that perhaps this person would not live for long. In this case, crowning him as a king did not seem to be an unrealistic idea. Kuang Ye's heart became hesitant at first. When he was sure that Yang Chendong was seriously ill, the idea of crowning him as a king was born. Of course, he also knew that such a big matter could not be decided by himself. He still needed to ask the emperor for instructions. And so, after sending out the urgent letter yesterday, another urgent letter was sent out after he returned to the study of the Gaozhou government. Ping in Beijing, Japan. The imperial city of Japan was also called the Imperial Palace of the Great Inner City. It represented the highest power in Japan, and was also the political, cultural, and economic center of the country. As the 102nd Emperor of Japan, Yanren was known as the Emperor of the Garden. This kind of name was very common in Japan. The people here were also very used to naming people after places, such as the foot of the mountain, the mouth of the river, the bridge, and so on. The Emperor of Japan was originally the most noble existence in this country. In fact, this was indeed the case to the outside world. Many orders were issued by the Emperor of the Garden and known to the people. But in reality, Yanren was more of a puppet-like existence. At least in some matters, he had to look at other people's faces and listen to other people's opinions before he could make the final decision. As a descendant of the royal family, Yanren naturally did not want to disgrace the name of the emperor. In private, he had been working hard to change the situation. This was why he sent his favorite daughter, Princess Junko, to the Great Ming Dynasty. At that time, the Great Ming Dynasty was very powerful to the outside world. At least, it was far from what Japan could compare to. They still had to look up to this big country in the east. After Princess Junko was sent out, some information came back through various channels. But most of it was about the princess's experience in the northern capital of the Great Ming Dynasty. The most mentioned person was a young man called Yang Chendong. The letter said that Yang Chendong was only in his early 20s, but he had already been conferred the title of duke and had a lot of influence in the Great Ming Dynasty. Regarding the records in this letter, Yanren naturally had a feeling of dislike towards Yang Chendong. It was not because of anything else. In his eyes, if such a person continued to develop, he would often become a powerful minister, just like General Ashikaga Yoshimasa. It was just that no matter whether Yanren liked Yang Chendong or not, when Xiao Lin suddenly came to the palace and brought back an important news, the emperor was finally shaken and had a better understanding of the name Yang Chendong. In a secret room deep in the palace, this place was not known to outsiders. Those who could come here were all very important people trusted by the emperor. Xiao Lin was able to appear here because of a piece of news he brought back, as well as the handwritten letter he took out from Princess Junko. When Junko left Japan, she and her father had agreed on some of the secret words in the letter. In other words, on the surface, there was nothing wrong with some of the letters. But only the father and daughter could see the authenticity of the letter and whether it was written under coercion. The letter that Xiao Lin brought was naturally out of Junko's sincerity, and the contents of the letter were not fake. This was something that Emperor Yanren could see at a glance. It was precisely because this letter was real that Emperor Yanren was even more shocked. After carefully reading the letter 3 times, he said with a serious face, "Little Lincoln, please tell me the truth about what you saw and heard." Xiao Lin nodded and then told him in detail how he met Yang Chendong for the first time with the princess, how he was chased and had to live in the Yang family village, and everything he saw later. It took more than an hour for Xiao Lin to finish telling the story. Then he looked at Yanren, who should be respected the most in Japan, and said, "Your Majesty, this Duke of Zhongdan is the most powerful and capable young man I have ever seen. It seems that there is nothing he can't do, and there seems to be nothing he can't solve." "Wait, you mean he's very powerful? How is he compared to the general?" Hearing this, Yanren interrupted and asked. "He should be stronger than him. After all, when he was young, the general wasn't as powerful as he is now." Xiao Lin only hesitated for a moment before giving the answer quickly. Swish, 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 swish. Yanren seemed to be very satisfied with such an answer and kept nodding his head. "All right, tell me about the cannon." It was no wonder that he asked this question. A cannon was priced at 10 million taels of silver. Yanren believed that his daughter, Junko, knew what this amount of money meant, but she still wrote it in the letter and suggested to buy one. It was no wonder that Yanren valued it so much. In front of the emperor, Xiao Lin naturally didn't dare to hide anything. "Your Majesty, I have never seen the cannon when it was fired, but I have seen the terrible consequences after it was fired." Terrible consequences? Yes, it was like a barren land, as if the heavens were angry. Xiao Lin tried his best to describe the scene after he saw the cannon blast on Kurajing Street. However, Emperor Yanren's expression changed again and again when he heard these words. In his mind, he seemed to have sketched out a very shocking scene, and this scene was soon installed in the general's mansion. It was as if a cannon blast could kill Ashikaga Yoshimasa, and he would regain control of the highest authority in Japan. I'll raise the money now, and I'll leave the contact with the mercenaries to you. Don't let me down. Finally, Yenren made up his mind. Although 10 million taels of silver was a huge burden to him, in order to regain control of the country, he agreed without hesitation. Ha-ee. Xiao Lin nodded excitedly. With such a heavy responsibility on his shoulders, he could imagine that once he succeeded, he would be put in an important position. By then, he might even stand at the top of Japan. Chapter 427. The mercenary camp outside Gaozhou Prefecture. The Emperor of Japan agreed to buy cannons and prepared 10 million taels of silver for this purpose. The news had already been sent to him. After reading it, Yang Chendong only ordered everything to proceed according to plan and handed it over to Commander Gao Xiong to handle. He threw this piece of information aside. Compared to Japan, which was far away at sea, Yang Chendong was more concerned about the situation in front of him. He was more concerned about whether or not he could be crowned king. Originally, Yang Chendong did not have such extravagant hopes. He only thought about how to use war to expand his military strength and get more things he needed. After all, if Leng Feng wanted to develop, it would not be possible without a sufficient population base. He did not want to use outsiders and trusted the Han people more, so he could only set his sights on the Great Ming. Facts had also proven that war was indeed the best way to test the strength of an army. At the same time, it was also the best opportunity to expand the army. He had obtained so many soldiers and taels of silver just by wiping out a motley crew of yellow bandits with only a few 100,000 people. This made Yang Chendong see the benefits that war could bring to him. However, he did not expect that the situation in Yunnan was so critical that Ingzong Qizhen threw aside the laws of the ancestors and gave Marquis Shiping the title of King of Shiping. One should not underestimate this title of king with a different surname. Once he had the identity of a king, he could open his own mansion and have his own army. Although the number of people could not exceed 3,000, for Yang Chendong, once he had this kind of power, there were probably not many places in the world that he could not go. There were too many benefits to becoming a king, so it was not an example. This made Yang Chendong very excited. However, he also knew that even if Mu Bin could be crowned king with a different surname, it was only a special event in a special period. It was not hereditary, so it was destined that the title of King of Shiping was only effective on Mu Bin. Otherwise, his descendants would not be able to enjoy such treatment. Even Mu Bin had so many backup plans when he was crowned king. If he wanted to be crowned king, it would be even more difficult. Not to mention that Zhu Qizhen had always been afraid of him. In this regard, the two brothers, Zhu Qizhen and Zhu Qiyu, had the same attitude. However, with the example before him, no matter how difficult it was, Yang Chendong had to fight for it. To him, this was definitely an opportunity. In the words of the commoners, if they missed this opportunity, they might not be able to find it again. With this goal in mind, when Kuang Yi came to visit him, he mentioned that he was very envious of Kuang Yi being conferred the title of king. At the same time, he pretended to be seriously ill in order to increase the chances of this matter becoming a reality. Of course, if he really wanted Zhu Qizhen to relent, just doing this was not enough. In other words, the more complicated the situation on the battlefield was, the more danger the Southern Ming Empire was in, and the higher the chances of success would be. Therefore, during these days, Yang Chendong had been paying attention to the movement of Prince of Min's faction. After waiting for days and nights, they finally made a move. The Miao people were the first to react. This time, the Prince of Min's faction was able to defeat the Southern Ming army and progress at lightning speed. The Miao people's help was completely inseparable. It was because of the Miao family's courage to fight, kill, and charge that the Southern Ming army was defeated and lost a large amount of territory and land in a very short period of time. At that time, there was no such thing as 56 ethnic groups being one family. As a minority, they were often limited from birth. Their birth meant that they would not have much success in their lives. Things like being high up in the imperial court, that was something that they did not even want to think about. As a result, each generation was worse than the previous generation. In addition to the bad living environment, the lives of the Miao people were getting worse day by day. It was not until Zhu Qizhen established the southern Ming dynasty in Nanjing that he increased taxes in order to achieve his goal of recuperating faster. This made the Miao people, who did not have a good life to begin with, live an abyss of suffering under the heavy burden. Wherever there was oppression, there would be resistance. Just as the Miao family was suffering, the Prince of Min's messenger came and promised many benefits, which made some of the leaders of the Miao family tempted. After that, they started the war. When they left their hometown and went all the way to Guangdong, they finally knew what was called wealth. In comparison, it seemed that their previous lives were too poor. Under sudden wealth, it would often make a person dizzy and change their way of doing things. This was the case for the Miao army. They didn't have to spend much effort to take down a few cities. After grabbing a lot of good things, the greed in their hearts couldn't be suppressed. Gradually, they started to like the feeling of looting. The main force of the Prince of Min's faction was still digesting the cities in their hands and constantly recruiting soldiers to consolidate their strength. When the Jiaoji army was taking down cities, they did not forget to transfer good things and some people to their own country. Only the Miao army did not care about cities and did not think about conquering the world. They were more interested in the benefits in front of them. It could be said that they were short-sighted or unambitious. In short, they were the fiercest when it came to attacking cities. Often, after taking down a city, they would loot for a few days. Then, they would leave the city and move on to a new target, continuing the pace of attacking cities. As they looted and moved, it was the Miao family, who had the least number of people, that caused the most damage. In less than a month, they had destroyed more than a dozen cities and state capitals, and the number of people affected by the disaster had reached more than 1 million. The Miao army, which was divided into several groups, was like a swarm of locusts. Wherever they went, the crops would be destroyed and the people would be displaced. Supposedly, the south of the Great Ming Dynasty had not experienced any wars for many years. The people were still rich. If it were other armies that came here, it would not be difficult to raise military provisions. However, the bad thing was that the people who came were Miao people. Not only did they snatch food, money, and women, they also burned the things that they could not eat. It was as if they were venting their poor lives over the years. Such actions naturally caused the number of victims in Yunnan, Guangxi, and Guangdong provinces to increase. Later on, when many people found out about the Miao army's actions, they did not wait for the Miao army to attack and left their homes with their families. Although people were not willing to leave the hometown that they had lived in for a long time, compared to being able to live, more people chose to leave home. Only a portion of the elderly, who were old and had bad legs, chose to stay. They looked like they would die in their hometown even if they died. The disaster of the Miao army was not inferior to the disaster of the Great Ming Dynasty. This point was quickly reached and was publicly announced in the main hall of the Southern Ming Dynasty. Wang Zhe and a few other senior officials also wrote to the emperor, requesting that the emperor send troops to deal with the Miao army to save the people from this disaster. Some of these people were sincerely loyal to the country, and some were because their ancestral homes were in the 3 provinces. Among them, there were some officials who were unlucky. Their hometowns were occupied, and their fields were occupied by the Miao army. In their anger, they naturally hoped that the emperor would send troops to encircle them and help them regain everything that they had lost. There were more and more memorials asking for troops, covering the entire dragon table. Zhu Qizhen's expression also became more and more ugly. How could he not want to send troops to deal with the rebellion? But first, he had to have the strength to do so. The Great Ming Dynasty, especially the south, had not seen soldiers for a long time. From the results of Kuang Ye's previous inspection, after many years of recuperation, some of the southern Ming Dynasty guards had some soldiers that could be used. However, they had their own mission. Guarding their own territory was their heavy responsibility. If they were to transfer these soldiers now and gather them to deal with the king of Min's rebellion, If there were too few people, there would be no effect on the overall situation. If there were too many people, the rear would be empty and there would be new rebellions. If that was the case, the southwest would change and the southeast would have trouble, then the southern Ming regime would be in danger, robbing the east wall to pay the west wall. If the west wall collapsed because of this, the gains would not make up for the losses. But if they did not transfer troops, they would not be able to solve the problem at hand. Although the Ministry of War had already started to recruit soldiers, it still needed a certain amount of time. At this time, Kuang Ye's second urgent report was sent to Zhu Qixin's desk. This report was about yesterday's matter of the brocade guard. After Wei Guang committed suicide, it emphasized that Yang Chendong was poisoned and that it was important to send troops to learn from Mu Bin and be crowned king. Trash, a bunch of trash. In the throne room, Zhu Qixin, who had read the report, raised his hand and threw the urgent report to the head eunuch Chao Jixiang, who was serving him. Your Majesty, please calm down. Take care of your dragon body. Chao Jixiang still didn't know what had happened, so he knelt down on the ground with a frightened look. Calm down, calm down. Every day, you only know how to calm down my anger. But you have to do something that makes me happy. That Wei Guang, not only did he fail to kill Mu Bin, but he also admitted everything. Not only did he cause me to be labeled as a meritorious official, but now he wants the throne from me. Tell me, should I give it to him or not? Zhu Qixin, whose face was livid, roared and stared at Chao Jixiang to express his dissatisfaction. Chao Jixiang's face instantly paled. Your Majesty, does Yang Chendong want to be crowned king? Who else could it be other than him? Zhu Qixin's voice implied this fact. That won't do. Hearing this, Chao Jixiang's eyes kept darting around as he spoke. Hearing Chao Jixiang say no, Zhu Qixin became interested. My dear minister, why do you say no? Chao Jixiang, who was kneeling on the ground, quickly crawled forward and came to Zhu Qixin's feet. He raised his head and said with a loyal expression, Your Majesty, it's a rule set by our ancestors that people with different surnames cannot be crowned king. King Shiping is an exception, but it turns out that it's not very useful to be crowned king with different surnames. Moreover, if we give it to whoever wants it, the world will be in chaos. Once the world is at peace, how will we deal with them? I'm afraid we can't get rid of them. Chapter 428. Chao Jixiang's voice was still echoing in Zhu Qixin's ears, but the unlucky Emperor Ingzong didn't say anything. From the moment Mu Bin became the king of Shiping, he knew that some things were out of his control. Once he was bestowed the title of prince, it was equivalent to having his own prince's mansion and even his own guard army. Although the number of people could not be too large, the mountain was high and the emperor was far away. Who knew if there was a restless heart under the surface of obedience? Especially a king who became a king by fighting, who had killed a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, had more specific military strength that couldn't be underestimated. But if he wasn't a king, how could they do their best? Marquis Mu Bin of Shiping was already the boss of Yunnan. There was nothing left to be conferred, nothing to be rewarded. If he wanted to use him as a bystander, there was no other way except for this move. He had no choice but to do this. Although the effect was not very good, in any case, with Mu Bin watching from the rear, it also took a lot of energy from King Min's side, so they couldn't attack the hinterland of the south. A king's title only played a role of restraint. Zhu Qixin was a little dissatisfied in his heart, but what could he do? He was the emperor, the son of heaven, but if he didn't have enough strength, how many people would listen to him? For the emperor, being a king for the sake of fighting was tantamount to giving away part of his power, which might be regarded as a disgrace. At the very least, none of his ancestors had ever done such a thing. But it was still better than being forced to perish. If he persisted for the sake of face and finally let King Min's side come to Nanjing, at that time, he would really be a sinner of the Zhu family, and he would have no face to see his ancestors. Thinking that the current situation was so erosive and difficult, Zhu Qixin began to seriously consider what Kuang Yi said about Yang Chendong's proposal. My dear minister, how is Duke Zhongdan's health? Also, I asked you to find a way to contact the mercenaries. Is there any progress? When these things were mentioned, Chao Jixiang's face became very ugly. He, who was originally clamoring that he couldn't be conferred the title of king, quickly lowered his head and said, "Your Majesty, please calm down. This subject is incompetent." Chao Jixiang couldn't be blamed for saying that. Whether it was Yang Chendong or the mercenaries, the embroidered uniform guard hadn't made any progress in such a long time. Needless to say, the mercenaries had perfect military discipline. Furthermore, the soldiers who were qualified to serve in Crimson City had all been seriously tested in terms of loyalty. In addition, they did not go out on their own, so it was even more difficult for outsiders to find out about them. Even though the embroidered uniform guards seemed to be everywhere, they were unable to do anything in the face of such a disciplined army. Naturally, it was difficult for them to achieve any results. As for Yang Chendong's place, it was heavily guarded. Even the auxiliary troops could not get close. Only the elite cold vanguard, who had gone through many trials and tribulations, had the right to guard outside. Not to mention, there were also the first and second guards, the elites of the elites. Under such heavy protection, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to investigate Yang Chendong's condition. The embroidered uniform guard had sent out many people, but most of them returned empty-handed. On the contrary, quite a few of them had gone missing. Chao Jixiang's words of incompetence expressed his helplessness toward Yang Chendong and the mercenaries. His words enraged Zhu Qizhen once again. Incompetent, incompetent. Do you not know what else to say other than this? Scram, scram. Seeing that Zhu Qizhen was enraged again, Chao Jixiang, who knew that accompanying a monarch was like accompanying a tiger, immediately knelt and left. Zhu Qizhen was the emperor of the Great Ming Dynasty, second only to one and above all. He had inherited the legacy of his ancestors. But at the same time, he had also inherited his ancestors' temperament, which was capricious. Who knew if he would punish Chao Jixiang in a fit of rage? Chao Jixiang left the hall, and the other eunuchs lowered their heads, not daring to speak. Not long after, a heavy sigh filled the hall. No one knew what the so-called true dragon, the son of heaven, was thinking at this moment. Gaozhou Prefecture. The Minister of War, Kuang Yi, sent 2 urgent secret letters to Emperor Ingzong, but he did not receive any reply even after a long time. At this time, extremely bad news spread over. The leader of the Heavenly Fortress camp, Miao Jinlong, who was given the title of Marquis by the Min King, was leading 80,000 troops from the Nanning Prefecture. The moment Kuang Yi received the news, he hurriedly summoned his generals to the front of the hall. At this moment, Ma Wei, Guan Ying Yuguang, and the other generals all had ugly expressions. Below the hall, the scout general was reporting the battle reports he had received. Miao Jinlong's troops are very good at fighting. In terms of strength, they are second only to Yang Wenba of the Dumang stronghold. Since the start of the war, they had already taken over 4 cities and cities. Among them, the number of small counties that they had taken over was uncountable. Their army had also expanded from 10,000 people to 80,000 now. They are currently attacking the Lianzhou prefecture and are not far from us. How many people are there in the Lianzhou prefecture? Kuang Yi asked directly. Only 1,000. The scout general did not even dare to raise his head. Kuang Yi, who took in a cold breath, knew that Lianzhou could not be defended. 1,000 against 80,000, the result could be imagined. Report. Right at this moment, another scout entered the hall and whispered something into the ears of the general who was kneeling on the ground. The scout general's expression changed again and again. He then waved his hand and waited for his subordinates to leave. He said with a panicked expression, "I just received news that the general of the Lianzhou prefecture has surrendered." What? Kuang Yi, who had suddenly heard the latest battle report, staggered and fell to the side before losing his balance. Luckily, Guan Ying reacted quickly and stretched out his hands to catch him. He also anxiously shouted, "Teacher, teacher, are you okay?" "I'm fine, I'm fine." Kuang Yi, who took in a strong breath, his chest heaved up and down a few times. Then he steadied himself and waved his hand at Guan Ying. Then he angrily scolded, "Bastards, a bunch of bastards." They received the kindness of the emperor and did not think of repaying it. They should be killed, their families should be wiped out, and their families should be wiped out. Kuang Yi angrily scolded. Unfortunately, the general of the Lianzhou prefecture could not hear him. Even if he heard it, he would not be afraid. After all, he had already surrendered. Who knew how long the Southming could last? Teacher, please calm down. Now that the Lianzhou prefecture has fallen, the next target will probably be our Gaozhou prefecture. As for how to deal with it, I need teacher to think. Guanyin saw that Kuang Yi could stand up on his own and took 2 steps back. Deal with it? What else can we do? We have to defend the Gaozhou prefecture to the death. With me here, we will not let these traitors take a step forward. Even though Savage Kuang was old, his voice was like thunder. Kuang Yi had made the decision to defend the city to the death. As a student, Guanyin immediately cupped his hands and said, "Student is willing to follow teacher and defend the Gaozhou prefecture to the death." Guanying's words were heard by Ma Wei and Yu Guang. The two exchanged a glance before cupping their fists and saying, "We will follow the orders of the minister and defend Gaozhou prefecture to the death. We will fight to the death and not retreat." Ma Wei and Yu Guang did not have a choice. Even though they were in the Gaozhou prefecture, their families were not here. Their original place of defense was not Gaozhou. If they really surrendered like the Lianzhou prefecture general, once the news spread, their families would not be able to survive. Even if it was for the safety of their families, they had no other choice. Furthermore, with the minister of the Ministry of War here, even if they wanted to surrender, they had to be able to control the army. Hearing the words of the generals, Kuang Ye's expression became better. Good. His Majesty will definitely know of your loyalty. After we defeat the enemy this time, this official will definitely ask for rewards for all of you. Thank you, Minister. Guanyin and the other 2 lowered their heads and cupped their hands. However, whether or not they would really listen to this so-called request for merit was another matter altogether. First, they agreed. Then, Kuang Yi wrote an urgent letter to be sent to Nanjing. After reporting the situation here, he looked at Guanyin and the other 2 and said, "Immediately seal the city. At the same time, gather the youths in the city and help the soldiers defend the city." In the Gaozhou prefecture, there were at least 40,000 people. Among them, there were 5,000 youths. If used well, it would be a significant force. Teacher, should we inform the Duke of Loyalty and ask him to come to the city to help us defend the city? When Guanyin saw that Kuang Yi didn't mention Yang Chendong, he thought that Kuang Yi was too anxious to remember, so he reminded him. "Sai, we can just send someone to inform them. However, if they are not willing to enter the city, we cannot force them." Kuang Yi thought about Yang Chendong's request and shook his head as he said half-heartedly. He didn't think that the little fox Yang Chendong would be willing to help him defend Gaozhou prefecture before he received a confirmation. Outside the Gaozhou prefecture, in the mercenary camp near the Liezhou prefecture, the battle report from the front line had already been sent here. Yang Chendong naturally knew that Miao Jinlong had led the troops here. They are finally here? Yang Chendong's attitude was completely different from Kuang Ye's. When he heard this, he didn't panic at all. Instead, he looked as if he already knew this would happen. "Young master, are we going to beat them up?" Mang, who was standing at the side, asked excitedly. From his words, it was not whether they should fight or not, but whether they should beat them up. Just this point alone showed how confident he was in winning. Actually, it was not only Tiger's Mane. The 7,000 Yang army soldiers all thought the same. The auxiliary soldiers of the Cold Front were even more so. With their advanced weapons, they could look down on the world and not reject any strong enemy. Even the temporary auxiliary soldiers were full of confidence after being trained for such a long time and learning excellent tactics. They only wanted to gain military merits in one battle and become an auxiliary soldier. They wanted to become a member of the elite Cold Vanguard as soon as possible and be envied by everyone. Chapter 429. Why do we have to fight? Yang Chendong tilted his head and asked after hearing Tiger's Mane's words. Tiger's mane didn't know how to answer the young master's question. Fortunately, Yang Chendong didn't point at him to answer. Instead, he said slowly, young master's goal was to force Zhu Qizhen to bow his head. Isn't the appearance of these people the best time to do so? If we chase them away right away, the problem will be solved. How can we force them to bow? Yes, young master is right. Tiger's mane is too naive. Tiger's mane was smart. After being pointed out by Yang Chendong, he understood everything and immediately replied. It's good that you know. Pass down the order. The camp will be in a defensive formation. Without orders, no one is allowed to leave the camp. Also, inform the logistics to prepare enough food and be prepared for a long standoff. Yang Chendong knew that Tiger's mane wasn't the only one who wanted to send out troops. He was afraid that all the officers would have the same idea. Thus, he passed down the order. Once a real and effective military order was formed, Leng Feng, who prioritized obeying orders, knew what to do. Just as Yang Chendong was passing down the order, Guan Ying came to the camp as a representative of Nanming. He wanted to meet Yang Chendong and invite him to Gaozhou Prefecture to avoid trouble. As expected, Guan Ying didn't even see Yang Chendong's face before Tiger's mane sent him away. My young master's condition has worsened. He is not fit for any exercise. We appreciate Master Guan's kindness. We will stay here and guard the young master's body. When he recovers, we will leave. These words left Guan Ying speechless. He could only hope that after the Miao army arrived and failed to take down Gaozhou Prefecture, they would make an example out of these mercenaries. This way, they could just sit back and watch the tigers fight. Gaozhou Prefecture and Yang Chendong's troops had all made defensive preparations. 3 days later, Miao Jinlong's 80,000 soldiers finally appeared in the southwest. Miao Jinlong was from the Miao tribe and was born in a big family. He had practiced martial arts since he was young and was familiar with the art of war. He had also seen many instances of the Ming dynasty's army bullying the Miao people. He had always wanted to fight for the rights of the Miao people one day and hold his head high. However, the great Ming dynasty was too powerful. How could the Miao tribe, who had a weak population and territory, contend against them? He originally thought that this was just a childhood dream that he would never be able to realize in his lifetime. But who knew that the situation changed so quickly? The prosperous great Ming dynasty was divided into two. Then the king of Min raised his army. Miao Jinlong, who had been waiting, knew that the opportunity had come. He rose in revolt and became the first group of people in the Miao tribe to support the king of Min. He expressed his stance early and took practical actions. After a while, he gained the favor of the king of Min Miao Jinlong, who was conferred the title of Marquis, led 10,000 Miao soldiers and was unstoppable. After winning every battle, the army grew stronger and stronger. Now, they had 80,000 soldiers and became a very important force in the king of Min's faction. Some things, if you don't do it, you won't know. Maybe it was because he had been trapped in the Miao tribe for a long time. Miao Jinlong had always thought highly of the Ming dynasty. However, along the way, he did not meet any opponents. Often, when the army arrived, the city would fall by itself. Countless gold, silver, treasures, land, and beauties were at his fingertips. He finally saw what was called a real life, what was called a life of enjoyment. He also saw how the Ming dynasty, which was praised by others, could not withstand a single blow. After experiencing more, his horizons were broadened. Naturally, his heart grew bigger. Just as the king of Min's main force was still consolidating and absorbing the fruits of victory, Miao Jinlong could no longer hold back. After asking for instructions, he led the 80,000 soldiers and started to sweep through the entire Guangdong. Attacking the Lianzhou prefecture was just the beginning. His goal was to enter Gaozhou, Laizhou, Guanghai Guards, and the southwest of the Guangzhou prefecture from Lianzhou. He wanted to be the vanguard to cooperate with the king of Min's main force to attack the Guangzhou prefecture. Lianzhou won the battle and the Lianzhou general surrendered and opened the city. This seemed to be a good start. Miao Jinlong was overjoyed and led his troops to seize the city for a day. On the second day, he went straight to Gaozhou prefecture. In his eyes, Guang prefecture was the only place to rest. The other prefectures were just steps to wealth and power. It was because of this idea that when the troops arrived at the Gaozhou prefecture, he sent people as usual to persuade them to surrender. The people were sent out, but only corpses returned. Guan Ying was ordered to kill the messenger with an arrow. This is so infuriating. How dare you kill the messenger? Men, surround the city, attack the city. When Miao Jinlong saw the messenger's corpse, he could not help but be furious. He immediately ordered to prepare to attack the city. My king, please calm down. Just as the other generals in the tent were enraged and were about to fight to be the vanguard, a voice rang out in the tent. Then, a man dressed in a long gown and dressed like a scholar walked out from the ranks. Mr. Zhou. Seeing the person who walked out, Miao Jinlong furrowed his brows. Then, he relaxed and asked kindly, Mister, why are you stopping me from sending troops? It is for the good of my king and all the generals. The man called Mr. Zhou said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Mr. Zhou's original name was Zoda. He was originally from Yunnan. Because he once offended a steward of the Marquis sheeping house, he was stripped of his scholar status. In a fit of anger, he went to where the Miao people lived and married into their family, becoming the son-in-law of the Miao family. Because he was literate and knowledgeable, he was chosen by Miao Jinlong and kept by his side. Zoda was worthy of being called a scholar. He had contributed a lot to Miao Jinlong's plan along the way. Even when the Min King sent people to contact them, he was the first to stand up and support them. Zoda not only focused on attacking, but also on attacking the heart. It was because of this that when he attacked the Lianzhou house, he did not lose a single soldier and obtained a city. All of this made Miao Jinlong admire him. In addition, this person had been in the Miao family for 10 years and even had a few children. There was no problem with his loyalty and he was very trusted. When he saw that it was this person who stood out, he was not angry. Instead, he asked kindly, "Let's hear it." Hearing that it was for his own good, Miao Jinlong asked with interest. Facing Miao Jinlong's amiable attitude and the angry expressions of the other generals, Zoda was neither servile nor overbearing. With a calm expression, he said, "My king, generals, you must remember that our ally in Guangdong, Huang Yuliang, was completely wiped out, right?" Of course. Miao Jinlong nodded his head. Due to his identity, he had never met young Master Huang or even his messenger. However, he knew that they had an ally in Guangdong. It was because of this ally that they were able to reduce the pressure on them in Yunnan, allowing them to achieve great things. Then do you know why young Master Huang was defeated? Let me tell you, he was defeated by the Ming army in front of you. Zoda said with a very firm tone. The reason he knew this was mainly because he was good at gathering information. He was not like the ordinary Miao soldiers who only knew how to fight and fight. There was such a thing? Miao Jinlong, who was originally curious about what Zoda would say, could not help but change his expression when he heard this. He finally understood why Zoda did not agree to him attacking the city. So what if there is? Miao Jinlong did not speak, but it did not mean that his generals were afraid of anything. Among them, General Zhang Tsing said with a fearless tone. That only proves that young Master Huang is too weak. If it were our Miao soldiers, we would definitely make the southern Ming army cry for their parents on the battlefield and know how powerful we are. That's right, that's right. After the other generals heard Zhang Tsing's words, they all agreed. During this period of time, they had dealt with and fought with the southern Ming army. However, the facts proved that this was just an army that looked strong on the outside but had ordinary combat strength. There was nothing to be afraid of. Huang Yuliang's defeat was definitely due to his own lack of strength. No, you are all wrong. Faced with the unanimous opinion of so many generals, Zoda refuted with the strength of a weak scholar. You all have only won a few battles, but you do not know that there is always someone stronger. Why don't you think about it? Since the Ming dynasty was able to conquer such a large country, how could they be weak? The reason why we aren't a match for them now is because our tempo is too fast. They weren't prepared and weren't able to adapt. However, once they are given enough time to deploy their troops, who can guarantee that we will continue to win? Not to mention, The ones who defeated young Master Huang weren't the Southern Ming Empire's army, but the most mysterious mercenaries that they spent a large sum of money to hire. Zoda did indeed understand a lot. This was also related to the education he received. It was precisely because he had read more books that he naturally had more knowledge and had more considerations. For example, studying the opponent was something that must be done. Mercenary army? When the generals heard this new name for the first time, they all looked at each other with a puzzled expression. Zoda did not expect them to understand anything. He only needed to tell them what he knew. As for what to do next, whether or not they had to continue attacking the city, it was not something that he could decide. Yes, it is the mercenary army. It was this army that once saved the life of the Southern Ming Emperor, Yingzong's life on the battlefield. It was also this army that defeated the Wala cavalry that wanted to enter the capital of Baiming. It was also this army that defeated young Master Huang, who was very influential in Guangdong. These are their achievements after they made their debut. He spoke truthfully about everything that he knew. Then, Zoda continued, if we want to attack the city, we will definitely not be able to avoid them. How much confidence do we have? As for where to go, I ask my king and the generals to discuss this. Chapter 430. Zoda shut his mouth and did not want to argue with anyone about this matter. He was originally a Han Chinese, but because he was treated unfairly and could not survive, he came to the Miao tribe and became the son-in-law of the Miao tribe. A person like him actually had a very low social status. He couldn't even be considered the head of a family. How many people would think highly of him? If Miao Jinlong did not see that he did have some ability and put him in an important position, he would not be qualified to enter the tent for discussion, let alone argue with others. Zoda shut his mouth, which made the others unable to find an object to argue with for a while. They all looked at King Miao Jinlong. The Miao tribe also had a very strict hierarchy, especially when it came to major matters such as the deployment of troops on the battlefield. The king's order was the final order. Everyone's eyes were on him, which made Miao Jinlong silent. Although it seemed that the journey was very smooth, and the army was also growing step by step. From the original 10,000 people to the current 80,000 people, it was a strong army. However, no one knew better than Miao Jinlong about his own strength. The so-called expansion of the army was just these soldiers who were forced to join. Most of them joined the army to fill their stomachs, unlike the Miao family that he led in the beginning. They were born to conquer the world and be proud of the heroes. They did not even have a goal. Such an army could only fight a smooth battle. Once they encountered a tough opponent, they were likely to be heavily injured or even defeated. It was possible that they could lose their lives. The great Ming dynasty could occupy the world until now. If it was said that they did not have a capable army, even Miao Jinlong himself would not believe it. Just like now, didn't they encounter one? A head-on clash was far from what he wanted to see. Where there were people, there would be underworld. This saying was also applicable in the army. For any organization, no matter what the intention was, as long as time passed, factions would appear. It was something that could not be stopped. Unless the system was very strict, if there was a great soul leading the army, these problems could be suppressed. Just like the King of Min's faction now. Everyone treated the King of Min as the core, but it was undeniable that which general did not have their own thoughts? If you want to be respected by others, if you want to share the benefits, the prerequisite is to have enough strength. Only then will others respect you, value you, and not neglect you. How to expand their own strength while winning the battle, or at least to preserve their own strength, became the most important thing in the eyes of the kings. If everything was as Zoda said, and the Ming army in front of them and the mercenaries in front of them were very powerful, then choosing such a tough opponent was originally an unwise thing. What was the meaning of winning if they used up all their forces and severely injure the enemy? It was just making a wedding dress for others. It was because of this desire to preserve their strength that Miao Jinlong listened to Zoda's words. He then said to the generals looking at him, "Forget it, since the Ming army in front of us is not so easy to deal with, we do not need to make too many sacrifices. We will just surround them and wait for their morale to drop and surrender. How about this? We will first move out of Lizhou Prefecture and take the nearby cities. General Zhang Zheng, listen up, I will give you 10,000 troops. Go around Gaozhou Prefecture and take Lizhou City. Remember, if the Ming army does not take the initiative to stop you, do not casually provoke them. Think about the big picture, understand? Miao Jinlong finally gave the order. He listened to Zoda's suggestion and did not take a head-on approach. Instead, he only surrounded the city and lowered the enemy's morale first. Then, he would have the opportunity to take Gaozhou Prefecture without bloodshed and complete his strategic mission. After the king gave the order, General Zhang Tseng stepped out to receive it. Not long after, the 10,000 Miao family soldiers rushed out of the camp and went around the border of Gaozhou Prefecture, heading straight for Lizhou Prefecture in the south. After the Miao army arrived, they did not immediately attack the city. Instead, they acted as if they were going to surround the city. This caused General Yu Guang, who had already prepared to defend Gaozhou City, to be puzzled. However, he soon found out from General Wei that it was probably because the enemy was afraid of the mercenaries. Yu Guang was still thinking about how powerful the mercenaries were. Just their name alone was enough to scare people into not daring to make a move. The Miao army actually started to move again. They went straight from Gaozhou Prefecture to the mercenaries' Camp 5 Li South. Don't tell me they want to attack the mercenaries first? But it seems like they only have 10,000 troops. Is that even useful? The deputy general beside Yu Guang voiced out his doubts while revealing an expression of disbelief. Idiot, they are probably going to attack Lizhou Prefecture. Yu Guang glared at the deputy general beside him with an expression that said, "You are really stupid." Then he quickly sent someone to report this news to the Minister of War, Kuang Yi, who was waiting in the government office. 5 li south of Gaozhou Prefecture, the mercenaries' camp. When the scouts noticed that the Miao army was moving towards their camp, they quickly reported it. Tiger's Mane did not dare to delay after hearing the news. He ordered Luo Per and the others to prepare for battle while rushing to the large tent where the young master was resting. At this moment, Yang Chendong was very satisfied. He was enjoying the fruits that the two ladies fed him. If he wanted to eat bananas, he would have them peeled and delivered to his mouth. If he wanted to eat grapes, he would have them washed and delivered to his mouth. Even if he wanted to eat apples, he would have them peeled and delivered to his mouth. With beauties by his side and delicious food in front of him, Yang Chendong could not help but feel like he was not thinking about the world anymore. Fortunately, in his previous life, in order to complete all kinds of missions, he had taken on all kinds of roles. In order to complete the missions, he had to act like he was. He could really endure hardships and enjoy blessings. Everything in front of him was just child's play. He could not lose Yang Chendong's nature. Outside the large tent, hurried footsteps could be heard, followed by Tiger's Mane's anxious voice. "Young master, the Miao army is moving. They are rushing towards our direction." Although his voice was a little hurried, he was not panicked. It was obvious that Yang Chendong had already prepared for this kind of situation. It was very simple. If someone attacked, then they just had to fight back. After Tiger's Mane reported, he respectfully stood in place. After a few breaths of time, the large tent was opened from the inside. Yang Chendong, dressed in green, walked out with a serious expression. "Let's go, we will go take a look at this Miao army." The intelligence had described the Miao people and the Miao army more than once, but he had never seen them with his own eyes. With the idea of knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy, Yang Chendong decided to personally take a look. The Miao army was indeed heading straight for the mercenaries' camp. When they were only 2 li away, they suddenly turned and passed by. This obviously provocative action caused many of the cold vanguard soldiers who had already gripped their spears to glare angrily. Some of the soldiers even turned their heads to look at the platoon leaders and company commanders beside them. Their intention to fight was very obvious. Ever since the mercenaries were established, they had shocked the world with a single brilliant feat. What the people of the great Ming dynasty knew was that they first saved Emperor Yingzong on the battlefield, then defeated Walla's elite cavalry, then fought bravely against the Huang bandits and quelled the rebellion in Guangdong. Each and every one of them had the aura of being invincible the moment Lung Feng was unleashed. How could such a proud army allow others to provoke them? Keep your eyes on the target. Without orders, no one is to act rashly. Otherwise, prepare to retire early. The company commanders and platoon leaders who were being stared at by those cold gazes naturally felt the pressure. They were extremely dissatisfied, but it was the duty of a soldier to obey orders. This was especially true for those who joined the cold front. Obeying orders was an extremely important task for them. Even if there were no orders from above, they could not evade the enemy's spear even if it pierced their chest. This was the most basic requirement to become an iron army, a strong army. Without orders to attack, the cold front, including some of the auxiliary soldiers who were ready for the second attack, could only watch as the 10,000-strong Miao army brushed past them. Speaking of which, the distance between the two sides was only about 300 meters. Those with good eyesight could even see the facial features of the other side. Therefore, they could see the mocking gazes of the Miao soldiers. General, it seems like these so-called mercenaries are nothing more than this. We are already so close to them, but I don't see a single brave soldier daring to rush out of the camp to find trouble with us. It seems like they don't live up to their name. Some of the junior leaders in the Miao army gathered together and laughed. General Zhang Zhang, who was riding on a horse and walking in the middle of the group, also laughed when he heard the discussion of his subordinates. That's right, they don't even have the courage to walk out of the camp. In my eyes, they are just a bunch of cowards. Once we take down Lijiao Prefecture, I will naturally tell the king to start with these mercenaries. Haha, I want to see what that scholar Zhou has to say when the time comes. General, you're wise. The group of junior leaders hurriedly flattered. Following that, the 10,000-strong Miao soldiers walked past the mercenaries' camp with high morale. Each of them seemed to walk with their heads held high, as if they were extremely arrogant. Young master, it seems like they don't have any intentions of attacking us. They are going to Lijiao Prefecture. However, there is no one there. The city is also empty. What are they going to do there? Hu Mang watched as the 10,000 Miao soldiers walked past the front of the military camp. After walking for 2 hours in a grandiose manner, he saw through their purpose. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.